These are real 911 calls, disturbing, mysterious, and true. Each story will send chills down your spine and slowly drift you into sleep. This story is completely free. We don't put any ads, which means we don't earn anything from these videos. All we ask is one small favor. Please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. It's free for you, but it gives us the motivation to keep making more real police stories every night. Also, tell us in the comments which city are you watching from and what time is it right now. We love reading your messages. Now, let's begin the story. Story number 1. I've worn a badge for 12 years, 11 of them on nights. I know the mile markers on our stretch the way you know the creaks in your own house. That night it was late winter, a dry cold with the kind of thin frost that turns the shoulder into glitter under your headlights. I was rolling eastbound, checking the usual spots, when dispatch put out a 911 open line call pinging near mile marker 23 on the interstate. The call had nothing, just wind and a low hum. The callback returned the same. We get hang-ups, pocket dials, people playing with the emergency SOS on their phones. But this one had an ID on our CAD as a roadside emergency unit. Box 1-8. That threw me. The call boxes were supposed to be removed 2 years back. I keyed up. Unit 3 to 11 en route to 23. I'm about 5 out. Copy 3 to 11, dispatch said. We're getting repeated open line activations. Caller sounds like wind noise only. Box ID reads 1 to 8. DPS database shows decommissioned. Dot confirms. It should be gone. Solid. I'll advise. Traffic was light. Once I got past the last exit, it was me and the long ribbon of concrete melting into black. Sodium lights in the distance pulsed orange, but out at 23 there are no lights, just the dull reflectors on the median cable and a drainage culvert down in the dip. As I approached, I cut my siren, no need to wake up half the county, and eased over to the shoulder. I stepped out and that cold went right through the uniform. I don't know how to explain it except that it was quieter than it should have been. Even with an interstate at your back, you hear the layers at night, a truck way out, a dog somewhere on a farm road, the air itself moving. There was none of that. Just my engine ticking and that long, steady breath the highway makes. Dispatch, 3 to 11. I'm on scene at 23, shoulder eastbound. I'll be out with it. Copy. Heads up, 911 open line reactivated. Same ID. Hang on. Time. Stamped as picking up 10 seconds ago. I looked toward where the old call box used to be. When they pulled them, DOT left a square of cleaner concrete and a broken bolt ring in the dirt where the post had been. I walked along the guardrail until I found the spot, a scuff of pale concrete maybe 10 feet off the shoulder. Nothing there now but a flattened patch of broom sedge and a piece of reflective tape caught on the lower rail. Dispatch, I've got the old footprint for the box. Nothing else obvious. Any vehicles stopped within a mile either direction? Negative. Cameras show clear between 21 and 24. 911 open line. Still active. I can hear wind. There's a beep every few seconds, like a system tone. I put a gloved hand on the rail. The metal was cold and a little damp. I leaned over to see down the slope. The culvert was a dark oval. Even with a flashlight, you can only see so far into that kind of black. I angled the beam and caught cattails pressed flat by frost, a beer can sanded shiny by time, and nothing else. No tire tracks cutting off, no fresh scuffs. My radio hissed. 3 to 11, we tried a reverse callback. It rang, then picked up to that same open line. I've got it patched. Do you hear this? There's an odd thing that happens sometimes with radio patching. You get your own audio fed back through at a delay, like a voice chasing itself down a tunnel. But what came through was dead air, and a very slow, steady series of 3 tones. Not high-pitched like a fire pager. Low, 3 beats. Silence, 3 beats. Silence. Copy tones, I said. Any chance we're hearing a test pattern from old infrastructure? Dot says those lines were hard, cut and capped. They're sending someone in the morning to confirm. I turned off my flashlight for a minute to let my night vision catch up and leaned on the rail. Some nights you just listen. We talk about gut feelings like there's something mystical, but it's really pattern recognition. You stand in the same kinds of places enough times. You know when something's out of pattern. Down the way, maybe a quarter mile, I saw a faint red blink that wasn't mine. It was low to the ground and irregular. Hazard lights, maybe. Then it stopped. The kind of stop that feels like a hand taking something away just as you look at it. I trotted back to the unit, rolled slow down the shoulder, and watched that stretch. Nothing. The blink didn't return. No smell of warm engine, no refrigerant tang. If someone had just shut off hazards in that cold, I'd have caught a trail the kind of heat you can feel in the air if you're paying attention. There was nothing. By then, the open line had called back in 4 times. The CAD time-stamped each activation to the second. Every time, box 1-8. Every time. The same lat divided by long, within a handful of feet. I parked again, this time straddling the gore point where the shoulder widens for the culvert, and stepped over the rail. The frost made the grass hiss under my boots. At the bottom, the culvert's mouth looked like a long black vowel. I crouched and let my light float over the concrete. It's smooth in there and shows scuffs easily. Nothing fresh. No sign anyone had crawled in or out. "Dispatch," I said. "Anything unusual on the recording?" "Stand by." A pause. Then, "We're hearing a voice now. Very faint. Could be bleed from your radio. Hang on. I'll turn down your channel on the patch." I stopped moving. When someone tells you to be quiet in the middle of quiet, your ears grow. I focused hard. The way you do when a cricket is singing above a refrigerator hum. At first, it was just wind. Then, very far away, that 911 operator cadence. "Stay on the line. Help is on the way." It sounded like the training voice they play in dispatch academies, no town name, no call sign, just the script. After that, the 3 tones again. "Dispatch," I said. "Confirm that voice is coming through on your end." "I'm not transmitting." "Confirmed. It's on the 911 side, not your radio. The patch is separated. We pulled your channel down." I took a breath and let it out slow. Any calls in this area historically from this ID? A long pause. You can hear when a dispatcher leans forward to read. Even the silence changes. Yes, 3 years ago. Multiple activations on the same night. Severe weather event. No responders available at first. The system opened a line and never fully closed. DOT replaced the pole. 2 years later, the program decommissioned the whole network. That's all I've got. The wind came up in a low, even push. My breath went sideways in the beam of my light. I looked along the rail again and noticed something I'd missed. A curled sticker on the back of a post about waist high, half peeled and silvered. I went to it, scraped the frost off with my thumb, and read the faded numbers. 18. Below it, a phone symbol crossed out with a line. It looked like someone had tried to blot out the number and never got around to it. "Dispatch. Confirm box 18 corresponds to mile 23 eastbound?" "Affirmative." It's the old inventory tag. Sometimes the answer is simple. Water gets into a conduit. Wires cross. Electricity takes a path you didn't think it would. A system somewhere leaves a little loop open, and all that loop wants is completion. If it finds a way, even a stupid way, it makes one. I've walked into enough strange electronic echoes to know that most of them aren't anything more than that. I stepped up the slope and put a hand on the post where that sticker was. The metal had that low vibration you get from highway traffic, distant, almost imaginary. I leaned my ear to it and, just for a second, I heard the 3 tones through the steel. Not loud. As faint as a watch ticking under a pillow. My phone vibrated in my vest. Unknown number. For a half second, my heart jumped like I was a rookie again. I knew what it would be, but I still felt it. I answered. Dead air. Then the same operator voice. "Stay on the line. Help is on the way." 3 tones. The line clicked, not like a person hanging up, but like a recorder stopping a track. The call ended itself. "Dispatch," I said. "I just got a call to my cell with the same audio." "Copy." CAD shows the 911 patch tried to offer to your callback number. The system's a little weird when the caller ID is unknown. It's not supposed to ring your phone. It's supposed to ring our board. I'll put in a ticket. I walked the shoulder for 40 minutes, east and west. doing the things we do when there's no obvious problem but a feeling keeps you on scene. I checked the median cable for fresh pulls, looked for glass that hadn't had time to gather dust, crouched and watched the wet line in the ditch for any disruption. The frost persisted, unmarked. While I stood there, a set of headlights came off the bend and slowed. A compact SUV pulled onto the shoulder behind me and kept its distance. I turned and made sure my light was on my chest and not in their face. A woman stepped out mid-30s, hospital badge on a lanyard, still in scrubs under a jacket. She raised her hand in a small wave. "Evening, ma'am. You all right?" She nodded, but it wasn't sure. "I'm sorry to stop. There were hazards back there." She pointed a finger down the dark. "I saw them. Just for a second. The way you see... You know when someone's got a flat and they pull over and those lights just hold their own space? It was like that. And then they were gone. I'm a nurse. I don't like passing someone who needs help. You're the second person who's seen that tonight," I said, which wasn't exactly true, but it was close enough to what it felt like. "We've had some weird calls from the old emergency box out here." She exhaled, and it fogged in her headlight beam. "We used to have those on the beltway back home. We'd call them ghost phones when they rang with no one there. They taught us in a class that sometimes the line can leak its own test tones." She glanced down the road again, as if the hazards might reconsider and come back. "Do you need me to wait?" "No, ma'am. You go on. Drive safe." She got back in, and the SUV rejoined the highway like that moment had never existed. The taillights drew a clean, straight line, and then were gone. Dispatch came back. 3 to 11. Your open line caller terminated at 0323. No further activations. DOT put a note on the ticket that they're sending a line tech at daybreak to verify the cut and cap. Copy. I'll clear in 5. I stood at the rail one more time, because I didn't like the idea of leaving while I could still feel that faint vibration. When you spend every night alone, along the edges of things, you keep little rules. One of mine is to say the thing out loud that I'd say to a person if there was one. It's silly, but it's unsilly in the moment. "Whoever you were, you got through," I said quiet. "Somebody heard you. We came. That's what we do." And, oh, my radio hissed. Nothing but squelch. Then, barely there, the 3 tones. And then nothing at all. In the morning after I'd slept, I checked the DOT ticket out of curiosity. The line text notes were short. Arrived 7:35. Confirmed no pedestal, no handset, conduit sealed under surface. Pulled access at mile 22 and 24 deadline in both directions. No voltage present. No dial tone. Abandoned plant removed 3 years ago per order. No further action. Dispatch emailed me the call log. 7 activations between 2:11 and 3:23. All box 18. Duration ranging from 37 seconds to 2 minutes. Audio, wind, low-frequency system tones, and a standard operator phrase, no identifying PSAP markers. The timestamps from that night matched a weather record from 3 years prior, almost to the minute. A winter storm had rolled through and stacked up crashes from here to the county line. I remembered that night. Everyone who worked it does. There are nothing stories, and there are everything stories. I don't know which this was. Most nights I lean on the rails, check the ditches, make sure that if someone's out here with their hazards pushing the dark back on their behalf, we find them. Sometimes we find no one, and the highway looks back at you with that expression it gets when it's got a memory it can't let go. It's a stretch of concrete. It doesn't feel anything. But if you stand there long enough and let the quiet draw a line between what's still here and what's gone, you start to understand why a deadline might still want to ring. The next week, same shift, I drove past mile 23 at almost the exact same time without meaning to. Habit. The rail had my fingerprints in the frost from the last visit, and I could tell that only because no snow had fallen since, and the days had been too cold to melt anything. I didn't stop. I rolled past with the window cracked and the heater on my feet, radio low, and I listened. No tones, no nothing. Just the ordinary sound of the road like a slow sea, steady and patient. It sounded clean again, like a blanket pulled tight over a bed, the kind of sound people fall asleep to. If it ever rings again, I'll go. But I hope, for whoever needed it. that it finally closed. Story number 2. Nights on the motorway make their own sort of weather. You learn the microclimates, the way bridges hold frost when everything else has thawed. The noise the wind makes when it threads through the barrier mesh. I've been roads policing for a decade, mostly nights. Mostly the same stretch of smart motorway that runs over the moor and back toward the city. We work in pairs when we can, but plenty of shifts, it's just one of us, and national highways a few miles behind. And the cameras overhead that never quite show you what your feet tell you. I was parked up in a lay-by off the M62, heater on my boots, radio low. The night was clean. That dry cold that makes the tarmac look like slate, reflecting just a hint of your blues. It was 2:30 in the morning. A few lorries moving east, the odd taxi aiming for the airport. The overhead signs were set at national speed limit. No works on. I was writing up a simple breakdown I just cleared when control came through. In that voice you get used to at night, calm, a little too careful. RPU 4-2, silent 999 call, possible e-call activation, location plotting between marker posts 349.4 and 349.9 westbound. Smart motorway shows stopped vehicle detection in lane 1, red X auto set. Are you free to attend? 4. 2. Show me making from the lay. By just after 350. 1 eastbound. I'll spin at the next junction. Any other units? Negative at this time. National highways en route. Caller unresponsive. Silent solution detected 5-5 keyed. Line is open. We can hear something. We'll patch. The patch drops into your audio like someone loosening a lid. It doesn't take over. It just sits there, quiet and insistent, daring you to ignore it. I heard wind first, but not the kind your mic picks up when you've got it on your shoulder and you're out in a gale. This was cabin wind, the soft rush you get when a car window is cracked, and someone's breathing carefully not to fog the glass. Behind it, a steady, slow tick. Indicator. Hazard. Something like that. And far away, like a phone left on a seat, a voice that wasn't the caller. If you're in danger and you can't speak, press 5-5 to let us know you need the police. Control, 4-2. I've got the patch. Do we have a vehicle description from the e-call? I had the BMW turned round, on the ramp, blues only through the bend, so I didn't startle anyone. Negative on make and model. The MSD minimum set of data is incomplete. We have a UK mobile network tag and impact detected. No airbag flag. Language, English. No GPS, beyond cell triangulation. That happens. Newer cars comply properly and tell you everything up to the VIN, seatbelt sensors, fuel type. Older telematics or aftermarket kits don't. Sometimes the phone's doing the call, using its own crash detection. Either way, silent 5-5 means someone wants us, and the stopped vehicle detection flag on the overhead system meant the computers thought a car wasn't moving. I joined westbound. Overhead, the red X's were lit over lane 1 from about a mile out. The matrix signs ticked down the limit to 40. A few drivers did what they always do, ignored the first X, moved over at the second. The hard shoulder's been gone on this stretch for years. You either get to an emergency refuge area, or you sit live in lane and pray the tech sees you quick enough. It does most times. And then there are nights like this. Control, 4-2. Approaching 350 westbound, lane 1 closed. Any visual on cameras? I pulled into lane 2, put my rear reds on as well to mark the road, and let the car find that steady hum it likes. Cameras are fogged. We have thermal bloom on the 349.8 pan tilt. Could be mist on the lens. National highways are 5 minutes behind you. Caller still silent. Tick noise present. We're hearing a seatbelt chime intermittently. There it was in my ear, faint and stubborn. That double tone cars give you when the ignition's on and the driver's door is open. Then the tick again. It takes your mind to a place, the orange flash reflected on a barrier, a knee half out of a door, someone thinking they'll just be a second. At 349.6, the carriageway drops under a farm bridge. It's a blindish bit at night. The overbridge cuts the sky to a thin letterbox, and the sound changes. I knocked off the siren, kept the blues on, and came down off the bend, eyes on the verge, scanning for a glint of reflector or a shape wrong against the right shapes. Nothing. No hazards, no glow, no smoke, no tire marks breaking the frost at the edge of the lane. I drifted to straddle lane 1 with the rear of the car, put my aeroboard up, and called it. Control 4-2. I'm static westbound at 349.7, lane 1. I've got the car protecting at 40. No obvious stopped vehicle. I'll be out on foot, torch in hand. Received. We've got the red X extended. Caller still up. The line is very clean, no road noise beyond what you're hearing. They're not on a hard shoulder. There isn't one. We can... Hang on. The patch changed, and for a second I thought it was my brain misfiring. The tick doubled, like hazards instead of a single indicator. Then, a voice, but not a person speaking into the phone. A nav system bland and helpful. Please take care. Hazard lights are on. It looped, with a pause between, and in that pause I could hear breathing, shallow and deliberate. I stepped into the dead lane with my torch high, the yellow beam washing the cat's eyes and the barrier, and then the verge, and then the small bits of motorway life you get, a ratchet strap lost by a haulier weeks ago, a crisp packet wedged under the bottom rail, an old wheel trim sanded silver by years. It's the practical things that anchor you. Job's not magic. Things leave signs. From the bridge back toward 349.4. There's a slight crown on the right-hand lane. If a car is limping, it'll tend to drift left there without a hard shoulder to catch it. I walked the white line, lit the ground, listened through the wind, trying to tuck in beside my ear. The red X's pulsed overhead in their slow metronome. I moved past a marker post, small, blue, half a meter tall, with its chainage. 349.6. They're like coordinates only people who spend too much time out here can read in their sleep. My body-worn camera chirped when I pulled my jacket down over it. It's funny, the noises you ignore until you're out here alone. I checked under the bridge for anything fallen exhaust pieces give themselves away by smell if they're fresh. A bitter metal scent. Nothing like that. Just the cold, and that tick in my ear like a second heart. 4-2 to control. You can get highways to put a rolling road on at the top of the hill. Drivers are doing 60 under the signs. I'm going to walk back to 349.4. Affirmative. National Highways confirm 1 unit at 350.2, rolling back. Their vehicle, a yellow and black SUV with a light bar that could turn night into a low-budget day, appeared behind me, moving slow. He widened, edged the nose into lane 2, opened the gap behind me. I raised a hand without looking, the old courtesy we keep so we remember it's humans doing this, not just systems and panels. He came up on the radio. 4-2. Highways. We've got lane 1 and 2 closed now. Nothing obvious on our cameras back there. We'll hold for you. Cheers. Markers say 349.4 for the plot. I crouched at the edge of the tarmac, where the smooth changes to the stones, and pressed my glove on the black. It still held a whisper of daytime warmth under the skin of cold. The verge was stiff with frost except for an oval patch the size of a tire just into the grass. The kind of imperfection your eye is trained to catch. I put the torch on it. The blades were darkened for the width of a contact patch, but there were no tracks leading in or out. Just that oval, alone, as if a wheel had been set there in the air and lifted away again. Control. I've got a single area of disturbed frost at 349.52, verge side lane 1. No drag marks, no break in the barrier mesh. Any CVRS hits? CVRS is our catch-all for the camera systems that look for stopped vehicles. The stopped vehicle detection had pinged earlier. Sometimes you get phantom returns from a bag of rubbish blowing around. CVRS flagged at 229 and 233, lane 1, 349.527. No subsequent validation by camera. Caller remained up across both flags. You've got 3.5 minutes on the line now. Silent solution confirmed. The patch in my ear gave another of those polite car chimes, and then, for the first time, a voice that wasn't a recording. A woman, very quietly, as if her mouth was close to cloth. I can't get the door open. Then breathing. Then the tick. The words were slotted between the repeats of the warning voice, like she was afraid of triggering something else. I didn't answer aloud because that's not how the patch works. Control is the one who can speak back. If I talk, I talk to them, and they route it. You learn not to make it about you when the person on the other end can't see you. It's about being predictable, being steady. Control's tone was that careful, kind people use for edge cases. Caller, if you can hear me, this is the police. We have officers on the motorway near you. Press any key on your phone if you can. If you can't speak, that's all right. We're coming to you. The wind shifted and carried a different scent. Coolant has a sweetness to it that sits at the back of your throat. I breathed through my nose and let it find me. It was faint, a memory more than a smell, but it was there, somewhere ahead and to the left, as if the night had a vein of it running just under the surface. Highways to 4 to 2. We're holding the closure back at 350. No one's entering your space. Do you want scene lighting? Not yet. I didn't want to turn the quiet into a stage show. There's information in quiet. At 349.45, there's a little culvert under the verge, concrete pipe, maybe a meter across. I got the beam down into it. Dry leaves, old fast food cup, a fox's prints set like punctuation marks across the silt. I angled up and walked the barrier, tracing along the rail with my gloved hand. Steel keeps the night story. You feel where someone scraped it. You feel smoothness that shouldn't be smooth. About 40 meters along, I felt a change and swung the torch in tight. A smudge at bumper height where the frost hadn't settled in a neat square. My own breath puffed and made it look like the mark was breathing. Control, 4 to 2. I've got a clear, recent heat void on the barrier at 349.43, lane one side. No debris. No paint transfer. If a vehicle was here, it was warm enough to deny frost, and now it isn't. Received. Caller status. Still up. We're hearing static. And I'm sorry. This is odd. The system says the call has been ongoing for 11 minutes. The timer on the screen reads 0307. That's wrong. It's 0241. We've got a clock offset on our side or theirs. National highways chipped back in. We can see your torch on our PTZ at 349.4 now. The camera timestamp is 3 minutes ahead. We get that sometimes when they reset after maintenance. He was making it normal. It helps. The earpiece filled, briefly, with that soft interior car noise again, and then a different kind of nothing, the blank, dead room tone of a call on speaker. Then, a single hiccup of a sat-nav voice. Recalculating. It cut itself off as if someone had put a hand over it. After, the woman breathed again, and her breath fogged something in my own mind because it felt too close. Control, 4 to 2. Ask the caller if they can see overhead signs with red crosses. Ask them to press something when the biggest gap appears between the flashes. A beat. Caller, can you see red crosses over your lane? Press a key when you see the longest dark between them. Tick, tick, tick. I stood there with a line of lights 100 feet above me, pulsing in measured, sterile rhythm, and thought about her eyes counting something I couldn't verify. The patch pop clicked, and then, after 2 cycles, a muffled pip, as if someone had pressed a volume button. It corresponded with a long pause between the X's. We were in the same place in the pattern, at least. We were sharing the same heartbeat. 4? 2? Any note of a vehicle horn on the line? I asked. If we get one, I might be next to them with the barrier reflecting it. Negative. Only environmental. I took 5 more slow paces and the coolant smell firmed. The sound changed too. There was a new, nothing sound the way motorway noise reflects off an object just out of sight. I moved the beam across the verge. From my angle, it was just grasses and the bottom of the barrier. I needed height. I keyed my mic. Highways, can you bring your vehicle up to me and give me the mass light for a minute, just on the verge? He eased up, careful with the mass, and set the light. It threw a clean white sheet across the verge and over the barrier. The beam settled on 3 things all at once. Scuff marks on the top rail, the width of a palm, recent, the faintest fog of breath hanging in the cold air just beyond, as if the barrier had been storing it and released it under light. And, beyond the barrier and the cutting, a patch of flattened grass the size of a person. Nothing and everything. Control, I'm going over. The drop's a meter and a bit. I put my gloved hands on the smudged part, and felt that hollowness steel takes on when it's cold enough to ring if you ask it to. I went over in a clean movement and landed on the far side, my boots going quiet on the softer ground. The cutting beyond is a gentle V between the motorway and the farmer's field. If someone had come off, they'd either ride it down and stop in the long grass, or they'd catch wheel on the lower fence. There were no headlights, no glass. There was, however, a silence shaped like a car. It's hard to describe. It's a hush that has edges. My torch caught a thin ribbon of clear space through the frost, curving for a couple of meters and then stopping at nothing. 4. 2. We've got a driver on the radio saying they saw hazards a minute before the red X came on, just under the farm bridge. Highway said. They're sure of it. I breathed out slow and let the white fog from me settle out of the beam. The patch in my ear carried a tiny sound, then a rubbery thunk, as if someone had nudged a steering wheel with their knee. Then very softly, I'm on the hard shoulder. There isn't a hard shoulder on that section. There hasn't been one for years. It's the kind of thing your mind says from habit when you're somewhere you've been before, and your body knows it, and your mouth doesn't care about changes. Control stayed steady. Caller, the road you're on doesn't have a hard shoulder. If you can, look for a blue sign that says, Emergency Refuge Area. It might be behind you. Can you press a key if you can see the blue? A blue ERA sign is reflective, and at night, it pops in your torch like a promise. There wasn't one in either direction for a few hundred meters. Next one was forward of us, closer to the crest. But the pip came anyway, confidently. Control, I said. Ask the caller if they can hear my siren. I kept it under my breath, almost apologizing to the night for what I was about to do. I tapped the siren once, a short burst. The sound went across the cutting like a sheet, bounced off the far bank, came back at me. The patch on my ear carried nothing more than its own bubble of wind and that ticking. The ticking slowed. That's the only way I can say it. Hazards on a lot of cars will speed up when the battery's dying or the voltage dips. But this was an impression, like someone letting their finger rest on a metronome. Highways to 4 to 2. We've got ANPR showing a registration disappearing between cameras at 349.2 and 349.8, timestamped 225. It never reappears. Could be a shadow on the lens, could be snow in the beam. Cameras are being temperamental. Copy. I stood in the cold and thought about the geography of ghosts. If a car had pushed the barrier and then fallen clean, no cut fence, no broken branches, you'd still have a registration plate in the grass, a piece of trim, something literal. Instead, I had that oval mark of missing frost and a silence shaped like a thing that had been here and left everything except itself. Control. Any historicals at this chainage? You ask because sometimes the ground holds a story, and sometimes the system does too. They do what they can while you're out there. You can hear the fingers on keys in the gaps. We have a fatal collision at 349.5 westbound, 3 winters ago. Single vehicle, weather-related. Caller managed a 999 before losing contact. Found by highways at first light. Emergency refuge area installation works took place 6 months later. There is no hard shoulder on our plans since then. I did not need that, and I did. The worst part of this job is not horror. It's the repetition of chance. You learn to be kind to ghosts even if you don't believe in them. The patch gave me one last thing. A door ajar chime, half a word from a polite sat-nav, and then a small human noise that wasn't fear. It was relief. It sounded like someone who'd decided they weren't alone. The line cut in a clean, bureaucratic click. Control's voice came in on top of it. Human again. Unautomatic. Caller has disconnected. We cannot re-establish. Network shows call duration 12 minutes, 42 seconds. It's stamping at 3-7 on the record. We'll put in a ticket. Okay. I stood there a moment longer because you don't run away from this sort of empty. You acknowledge it. I crossed back over the barrier, wiped the smudge my gloves had left on the frost, just enough that it broke the perfection, and nodded to the highways lad. Bring it off in stages. I'm going to the next refuge area to check it by hand. We walked it down together. The ERA sat a few hundred meters forward, dug out of the verge like a lay-by. It was empty. The SOS post glowed with its gentle green LED. I pressed the button and it chimed up to the regional control center. Emergency telephone. Which emergency service? Police, I said, feeling a little foolish. Just a test. Confirm phone is working. Loud and clear, officer. The voice came through, amused and kind. We've had no activations in the last hour. I clicked it off and left the handset cradled. The plastic was warm, as if someone had been holding it a minute earlier. That's a silly thought in the cold. Plastic doesn't hold heat, but your fingers tell you what they tell you. We opened the road and I sat in the BMW for a while at the next lay-by. The heater fan blew a soft ribbon of warmth past my face, and the radio lowed with the ordinary stuff again, a domestic somewhere in town, a suspicious vehicle in a village lane. I filled out the catalog the way we do, with chainages and times and facts that don't flinch. Silent 999, 5 to 5 pressed, incomplete e-call data, SVD activations at 349.5, negative at scene, observed frost disturbance verge side, barrier heat void present, no debris, no casualty found, national highways notified. Nothing supernatural goes into a box. Boxes eat facts. In the morning, just before I went off, I had a call from the highway's supervisor. He'd pulled the overnight matrices and system flags. We get bleeds sometimes, he said. Legacy devices, test cycles, you name it. The stopped vehicle detection will throw a false now and then if the radar picks up a bag that's learned to be proud. Cameras don't help when the temperature's doing tricks. But the weird bit? The sign at 349.4 put itself into incident ahead before the SVD flagged. There's a heartbeat in the system. Sometimes it beats before you ask it to. I slept, day bright, leaking round the curtains. When I woke, I had an email from control with a link to the call record. On paper, it was routine and wrong at the same time. The line timed out at 3 hours 7 minutes and 42 seconds. Our logs have the closure running until 2:47. The network team sent a note, possible offset on a server, at a switch site miles from here. They fixed it. The e-call data, such as it was, blanked itself after an hour. We couldn't pull a VIN. The only line that stayed with me was the caller's 2 sentences. I can't get the door open. I'm on the hard shoulder. A phrase from a road that doesn't have one anymore. A week later, same night, I drifted west again past that bridge. No red X this time. National limit on the board. A clean run. The frost gave everything a quiet brightness. I eased off the throttle as I came under the bridge and let the noise drop. I listened. No tick. No cabin wind, no chime, just what there normally is, the hum of rubber on a country's spine, the endless free air just beyond the fence, a feeling that the motorway is an honest machine doing its work. I nodded at the small blue marker post, as if it were a person on a doorstep I pass most nights. Be all right, I thought, as if that were a thing I could tell a patch of road. Be all right. Story number 3. I work expressway traffic for Kanagawa Prefectural Police nights mostly. The stretch where the Tomei Expressway turns black and quiet after midnight. Green signs like islands of light over long, empty lanes. You learn the rhythm of it, the low, even hum from tires, the tunnel ventilation that never fully stops, the way the air cools another 2 degrees inside concrete. We share the road with Nexco patrols, tow operators, the service area cleaners who wave when they see the red beacon in their rear view. Past 1 in the morning, it's all delivery vans and long-haul trucks, the steady ones. Predictable. It's the gaps that make you notice things. That night was dry and clear. A winter weekday. I'd been sitting under an overpass near the Abina Junction, engine on low idle, filling out a traffic stop. My call sign was 3K12. The radio our prefectural network gave its soft, polite chime for priority traffic, and control came up in the steady voice I've known for years. Calm matters more at night than anywhere. 3K12. We have a 110 from an emergency road phone inside Koyo Tunnel, inbound, around kilopost 38.6. Open line. No voice. Nexco Central reports. Camera maintenance in progress, inside the tunnel, limited visibility. Can you respond? Nexco unit is 10 minutes out. 3K12, copy. Leaving Abina, 2 minutes to the tunnel mouth. I lit the red beacon but held the siren. On the expressway after midnight, noise spreads like water. You don't splash it if you don't have to. 110 calls are usually phones in hands, drivers, passengers, rubberneckers with half a story. The road phones are different. They're mounted every couple hundred meters in tunnels and pull boxes on the verge in the open. When they activate, they open to Nexco's control, who can conference us if it's police. This one had dialed straight into our side, a crossover we see sometimes when lines are in maintenance. The CAD showed an SOS activation and a flag. No operator audio. It also showed something that made me touch the screen, thinking I'd read it wrong. Last activation at this location? 3 years prior, same week. The tunnel sat like a dull mouth ahead of me, black cut into the hillside, ringed by yellow lighting that made the night look thinner around it. The external VMS boards were already lowering speeds. Incident in tunnel slow down. Above lane 1, a red cross had lit up. The inbound traffic was light, one truck between me and the mouth, 2 cars beyond, all of them obedient to the sign language we use to keep people alive. 3K12, 110 line is still open. We hear tunnel ventilation and intermittent tones. Control said. No voice. Nexco is asking if you can confirm which emergency phone is active if possible. They show Bank B, handset 12. Copy, I said, which is habit when you're not sure. I've walked that tunnel more times than I can count. Bank B is on the left inbound, the side with the lay, by half a kilometer in. The handsets are inside bright orange boxes with a push-to-open door, waist height. The handsets are corded, bright red, with a big square button to call. They're simple on purpose. In stress, you don't want options. I went down to 60, then 40, as the truck at the mouth cut its hazards for a few flashes to let me by. I touched the siren just once, a note like a cough, and slid past him into the mouth. The red beacon painted the tiles as I went, turning concrete into something that felt alive under light. The moment you pass the threshold, your senses change. The car's radio picks up the rebroadcast system they run for AM. The sound turns a little hollow. The air gets that cool, dry taste from the fans. I could hear the ventilation as a presence more than a noise. The way you feel your own breath on cold days. And it sounds like a room in your head. The tunnel's lanes are narrow, shoulders even narrower. There are emergency laybys cut out every so often, but most of it is wall and white line, with a curb that wants to remind your tires it's there. My tires hummed their note, and I timed my progress by the small green signs fixed to the wall. KP 38.2, 38.3, 38.4. The open line call pinged 38.6. I dropped into lane 2, set the arrow board on my rear window to push traffic right, and let the beacon do its work. 3K12, Nexco requests you set cones at the lay, by if you find nothing in lane. They're 5 minutes out with a lane closure, Control said. Received. I could hear the tunnel broadcast system above the ventilation now, the recorded male voice they use when there's an incident, polite and neutral. Attention. Incident ahead. Please slow down. Follow lane signals. It's meant to be reassuring, like someone switching on a light in a hallway. My eyes kept pulling to the left wall, waiting for an orange box with its door open. At 38.6, I eased off and rolled the car's left tires almost onto the raised curb. 3K12, I'm at KP 38.6 inbound, I said. Stopping, I'll be on foot. You hear every small thing when you open your door in a tunnel. The shift of pressure, the first footstep on the painted asphalt, the beacon's reflected pulse coming back at you from the tiles. I took the baton with the light on its end and stepped into lane 1, and then into the slim safety of the curb next to the wall. The orange box was there, Bank B12 stamped on the plate door closed, a window of clear plastic in the face showing the red handset sleeping. No sign of a hand or glove having touched it recently. No smear, no fresh condensation. The little green LED on the side, the one that tells you the phone is live, was on. I pressed the door release, and it swung open on its spring. Inside, the handset cord hung in a tidy loop. The call button pulsed a slow amber, which meant the phone thought it was in a call. I put 2 fingers near the handset without touching it, and felt something I've only ever noticed when I'm being too careful. The air was a fraction warmer inside the box, the way a cupboard is warmer when someone's just closed it. Control. Handset door is closed, but the unit shows active call state, I said. The radio sounded too loud in the tunnel and somehow far away. I'm not breaking the call. I'll stand by. Received. 110 line continues open. We're hearing the tunnel public address, repeating, and A tone. 3 short notes. Then nothing. It loops. Irregular. Nexco confirms no audio on their console beyond the open signal. I stood with my shoulder almost touching the wall and listened with my body, not just my ears. The tunnel held sound, like a bowl holds water. Behind the public address, behind the ventilation, there was another thin layer. A scratch? No. A gentle, regular tick at an interval that made my brain say hazard lights. I glanced down the lane. No glow on the tiles. No red blinking on white paint. The tick in my ear grew loud for 1, 2, 3 beats, then vanished. At 38.7, there's a services niche, an alcove with a fire extinguisher and a fire hydrant valve. I walked the 12 steps to it and put my light in. Dust as you'd expect, a faint old water smell from the hydrant, nothing to say someone had sheltered here in the last hour. I came back, running my gloved hand along the seam where wall meets curb, feeling for grit that had been shifted. A dropped phone, anything small. My light found a scuff on the white line near the wall, fresh enough that the paint still had a matte look where it had been abraded. A shoe scuff, not a tire. It faced the wall, like someone had pivoted on their foot to lean in. 3K12 to control. I have a fresh shoe mark on the line at 38.6, I said. No debris. Phone is active, but unused. Understood. The 110 line. Stand by. Control went quiet for a full 4 seconds, which on the radio is a lifetime. We're hearing a live voice. Very faint, female, uncertain language. Could be Japanese, could be a second voice under tunnel noise. I'm raising the gain. I did what you do when you can't help but feel you're not the one in charge of what you're listening to. I bent my head toward the orange box and put my hand next to the mouth of the handset, not touching, but close enough that if someone were breathing into it, my skin would know it. For a second, the ventilation seemed to dip. The box's plexi window fogged very lightly from my own breath and then cleared. Inside the box, the amber LED ticked as if in sympathy with the hazard I couldn't see. 3K12, highway sorry, Nexco unit turning into tunnel. Came another voice on our shared channel. A young operator with his own comm. We have lane closure board set behind you. Do you require scene lighting? Bring it up slow, I said. No heavy lights yet. I need the dark to tell me what it's hiding. I heard the deeper engine note of a Nexco patrol truck entering the tunnel back toward the mouth, and then saw the orange of their aero board painting the tiles like a second heartbeat. I crouched and pressed 2 fingers to the asphalt. The road keeps your secrets, and then it gives them back if you press for long enough. The paint was cold to the touch, air colder. On the lip of the curb, a tiny bead of water trembled and fell, making a noise smaller than a raindrop. The ventilation breathed at the rate of a machine that doesn't tire. The public address voice made its little intermission, and then came back. The same words, in the same order. It's comfort, and it's eerie if you listen too hard. Control came back with a new kind of careful in her voice. 3K12 were getting a phrase. Moshi moshi. It's a phone hello. Then, wait. Then the same 3 tones. The timestamp on the call in our CAD is advancing out of sync with real time. It's showing 2 minutes more than our clocks. We've checked. Our side is correct. Understood. I looked down the wall toward the next box. Bank B13. Every 20 meters, another slice of orange. Another promise of help. Ask the caller to press the handset button twice if they can hear me moving. The handset's button clicks. Nexco phones are old enough to be honest when they click. Caller, police. If you can hear us, press the button twice. Control left 5 seconds, then 10. The patch in my ear, because they'd conferenced the line into my car, breathed its steady electronic breath. Then, a soft, double pip that wasn't in the tunnel but came through the line, like someone tapping the call switch with their fingertip. Genuine. Confirmed, I said, my voice too loud under the concrete. We're with you. 3K12, please be advised. We have a past incident at this location. Control said, because the system makes us honest. 3 winters ago, single vehicle impact, no secondary. Driver called 110 from an emergency box at Bank B12. Line dropped. Found at first light. After action reports complete. Nexco replaced the box hardware following. Current hardware is newer generation. Ni, end, end, N, end, 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 end. We don't talk about ghosts at work. We talk about backing each other up and checking the small things so the big things don't surprise you. But when she read, found at first light, a picture you don't want found me anyway, the empty inside of a box with a handset off its cradle and a silence that wants to be filled. The Nexco truck pulled up 40 meters behind me, engine tone lowering as the driver put it into neutral and set out 2 fold-up cones with the kind of quiet efficiency that only comes from doing this when others are asleep. He kept his distance until I waved him closer. "Phone shows active?" he said. Voice kept low because the tunnel makes voices sound like they belong to someone else. "Active. We've got a caller on our side." I stepped aside so his tech could put his tester to the small jack under the handset cradle. He frowned, not distressed, just interested. "There's loop current," he said, "but it's not our switch doing the hold. It's on your side. The call's bridged." "We can hear her," Control said in my ear as if they'd been listening to us and chosen the moment. She said one more word. "Behind." I turned away from the box, back to the lane, to the tunnel's throat. Behind what? I thought, and then felt something I should have noticed earlier. The tunnel's sound wasn't symmetrical. The reflected noise off the tiles on the right was fractionally louder than the left. Not by much. Enough that my skin took notice. "Lights off for a second," I said to the Nexco driver, who looked at me like I'd asked him to close his eyes on a ladder, but then did it. The orange arrow board dropped away, leaving only the emergency strips and my beacon. I clicked my beacon off as well. For a second, we had only the tunnels breathing and the tiny running lights on the ventilation housings. In that dark, your eyes widen and your ears correct for you. I could hear something like the hush a car makes when it's close to a wall, an absence that adds itself to the presence you're used to. I took 10 slow steps forward, past Bank B13, counting them under my breath so the counting would give the dark something to hang on. At the 11th, my baton's tip brushed air, where I expected tile. There was a maintenance recess small, hip-high, the kind where a worker can stand half out of the lane. In that recess, the tile felt dust-free under my glove, recently rubbed by fabric or a hand. On the floor of it, a small rectangle of darker clean, where the frost would have formed if it had been outside. Something had leaned here. Someone, recently enough that my brain supplied images of a jacket cuff lifting and leaving warmth that air hadn't claimed yet. "Control," I said. "Ask her to press the button when I knock on the wall." I tapped the tile twice with the baton. Soft. Then waited. 2 soft pips came through the line in my ear, perfectly on the beat. Close didn't feel like a metaphor then. 3K12, Control said, voice stepping down half a note into the register where people hide reassurance. Nexco is asking whether the phone could be bridging a recorded line from their training bank. They have no record of an active drill. They're sending their telecommunications engineer from the center. He's 20 minutes. "I'll hold," I said, and then to the orange box. "We're here." I didn't say it to the device. I said it into the space between the wall and the lane. To the idea of a person who needed to hear it. Not for theatrics. For us. The line gave one more gift before it ended. The public address cut out for 2 breaths, and the tunnel sounded like a deep memory of itself. Then, very faint, a sat-nav voice, Japanese, female, neutral, spoke the first half of a word, Ushiro, which is behind. Then the 3 tones, low, the same 3 I'd heard as if through steel. The line clicked, not like a person hanging up, but like a system removing a thing from its list. The amber light on the handset went from a lazy pulse to steady, then off. The box returned to its blank, patient face, waiting for someone to need it. Control sighed quietly. The kind of sound dispatchers allow themselves when they know they're with you and you can hear them be human. 110 line has dropped. No ability to call back. Nexco confirms their sideshow's call end as well. We'll save the audio. Timestamp drift noted. We set cones. Nexco lit the lane with the gentlest mats of light they could, the kind that show you where your feet are without making the tunnel shout. We walked the next 100 meters together, 2 pairs of eyes, blades of light on tile, looking for the ordinary aftermath, a clip, A scrap of bumper, glass grit. There was nothing in the places where noise gathers. The shoe scuff, the warmth in the recess, the box that had been a little too warm inside those stayed as the only facts that would fit into a report without making someone smile politely. Outside the tunnel, the night was normal again, wide and cool and easier to breathe. I stood on the apron just beyond the mouth and wrote what I could in the car. 110 from SOS phone B12. Arrived 128. No vehicle seen. Amber indicator on handset active while line open. Faint voice heard over line. Nexco equipment tested normal after call terminated. Past incident at same location noted. When I went off at 6, I lay in my apartment with the blinds open just enough to let the light find me. The morning made the room gray and soft. Sleep found me slowly, like a careful driver easing over a seam in the road. Before I drifted all the way under, I thought about the tunnel's voice saying, "Incident ahead," and the person who might have pressed a red button hard enough to feel the plastic give and then waited with their mouth close to a handset too clean to show their breath. 2 days later, after the day shift had their turn with paperwork, a Nexco engineer came by the expressway office with a folder under his arm, and the look people get when they want to tell you something they think you won't believe. He laid out the printouts on our table. Neat, precise. The SOS phone at B12 registered line seizure at 123, he said. Our switch saw the call, and then saw it handed to police through the interconnect. The handset cradle sensor shows closed the entire time. No lift. That's the anomaly. You have to lift to seize unless the line is bridged by the far end. Our CAD shows receipt at 124, our sergeant said, pointing. And our audio recorder has the PA bleed and the tones. The script sounds came from your broadcast system. We know that part. The engineer nodded. The tones are interesting. They match the old test pattern we used on first-generation boxes. We retired them when we upgraded this tunnel 3 years ago. He stopped and looked at me because he knew I'd been there that night, and because he wanted permission to say the next thing. 3 years and 1 week, to be exact. I thought about it, and I let the silence be the answer. He closed his folder and gave us a small, polite bow, the way you do when you've brought everything you can carry and it weighs less than you thought it would. The tunnel is just a hole through stone with fans and tile and rules. It doesn't carry stories any more than steel does. But I've learned to leave room for odd echoes. Systems get weird. Clocks drift. Boxes hold old patterns because someone forgot to tell them not to. If it comforts you to put it there, do. It comforts me. Most days. And then there are the other days, when I drive through at 123 without meaning to and glance at bank B12 as I pass, and my eyes look for nothing at all and still find themselves wanting to see a hand in the window of an orange box. A week after, I went through again, inbound, just to check a lane closure. The sign said nothing. The public address was quiet. The ventilation sounded like always. I slowed in the left lane and drifted my right hand across the steering wheel, so my palm brushed the leather in a way that makes a small, private sound. At 38.6, I did not stop. I looked. The orange box sat patient and a little proud against the tile, its window blank. My radio didn't chime. The world kept its breath in the ordinary way. Maybe that night had been the last of something repeating. Maybe it had been nothing at all. I still keep a habit now. When I walk past any SOS box, even on a day with traffic loud enough to make you feel small, I tap the door gently with 2 knuckles. Not enough to make noise, just enough for the box to know I know it's there. Devices are indifferent. People aren't. Somewhere between the two, we work. Story number 4. I've done highway patrol in Victoria long enough to know the different voices the road has at night. On the M31, the Hume Freeway past midnight, the trucks talk in a low, even tone, B-doubles holding their lane like they've made a handshake with the white lines. The wire rope barrier keeps its own faint hum. The paddocks are all dark shapes with the odd farm light sitting out there like a planet, and if you crack the window a touch, the night smells like dry grass and the ghost of hot brakes. It's not empty. It's just steady. That's what I like about nights. Steadiness. I was parked in the emergency stopping bay near Wallen, heater on my boots, radio low, paperwork doing that soft rustle it does when you're honest about finishing it. It was about 2:10 a.m. ESA comes through on our side as ESTA, and you learn their cadence, calm, neutral, like a doctor's tone. The radio clicked, and that voice came in. HWP 431, ESTA. We've had a 000 call, open line, no speech, from a handset plotting to the Hume Freeway northbound, approximately kilometer post 54. AML data present. We're hearing cabin noise and a chime consistent with a vehicle. Can you start that way? Incident response unit is being notified. HWP 431 received, I said. From Wallen Bay, 2 minutes. I put the car in drive, red and blues on low power, no sirens. You don't wake up half the Shire if you don't have to. Any other jobs on? Negative. Callback attempts unanswered. AML indicates no travel device static. We have an altitude note. 1 moment. There was the soft hush of someone scrolling. Vertical accuracy is odd. -4 meters. Copy. Phones these days do that, send lat, long, even elevation. -4 meters on a freeway is a quirk, unless you're in a cutting or a culvert. Here. We've got both. The signs came up as I rolled out the overhead blacks, shaking themselves awake. Lane control put a red cross over lane 1 with an 80 over the rest. Incident ahead. Slow down. My car's dash threw back a neat reflection of itself in the windscreen, and the road ahead looked like it always looks at that hour. Half a dozen sets of taillights spaced out like notes on a line. ESTA, what are we hearing on the line? I asked. Soft tick, like an indicator, the call taker said. Seatbelt chime heard once. No speech. Telstra ECP transferred to police, and we're holding the line. AML lat long is stable. Confidence radius 20 meters. Sometimes that kind of description tells you more than anyone intends. Hazard tick, seatbelt chime, no road noise. If you imagine it, you see a car pulled over with hazards on, driver door open, someone thinking they can sort it themselves. Then time stretches, and the phone sits there, and the system does what the system does. Northbound past the Wallen ramps, the Hume is 4 lanes, with a grassy median and wire rope. There's a culvert under the northbound lanes, at about KP 54, where stormwater slips under and heads for a creek. The shoulder is wide enough to stop a broken down ute without feeling like you've put a foot off a veranda onto air. I rolled to 60, dropped a little left so my rear bar would protect the space, and pulled behind a spot that my eyes liked even before my brain had latched onto the marker post numbers. The overhead set another red cross, and I put the arrow board up to ease traffic into 2. My radio sat calm. My heart did its steady thing. HWP 431 on scene at KP 5-4 northbound, I said. Lane 1 closed by signs, I'll be out on foot. When you open a door onto the freeway at night, you hear all the layers at once. The air moving because trucks have made it do that for hours. The crushed stone under the asphalt creaking in your own head. Your engine ticking its heat away. I dipped my shoulders, got a torch in my left hand and kept my right free, and walked the shoulder. The grass was silver at the tips from a light frost. The wire rope barrier was beaded with it like the world had decided to make it delicate for a bit. There was no car. No hazards reflecting off the W-beam, no glow off the plastic cat's eyes, no glass scatter, no recent scuff in the fog line paint. But the quiet had a shape. If you work long enough, you stop arguing with that and just try to read it. ESTA 431. No vehicle at 54.0. Can you confirm chainage? I said. Any more detail from AML? Affirmative, she said. AML shows -37.448 by 145.029. Elevation -4.3 meters. Timestamp 2113 hours. We're seeing a seatbelt warning tone again. Caller's handset is on speaker. No speech. I moved to the wire rope and put 2 fingers on it. It held its own cold like wire does. But there's a vibration to it at night, like the tiniest guitar string. You can tell when the big stuff is close from it, and you can sometimes tell when nothing big has been here for a while by the way it's content to do nothing. Just now, I couldn't tell. It felt like it had shaken itself to a kind of tired. A pair of headlights eased past in lane 2, the driver doing the right thing, hazard for a couple of beats to warn the truck behind of my presence. IRU, that's the Vic Roads Incident Response Unit, came up behind me a minute later. A yellow truck with a light bar that looks like summer noon for a second, and then backs off to friendly. He pulled up with space to spare, took cues from my arrow board and waited for a wave. I crouched at the culvert inlet. In the day, it's just concrete and function. At night, it becomes a suggestion. My beam hit the lip and the long mouth. Dry, mostly. A few skittered gum leaves. No recent slide marks on the regular dirt in the bottom. And yet the AML elevation stuck in my mind. -4 meters. The culvert box would put you near that if you were inside it. Esta, can you ask the caller to tap their handset if they can hear me calling? I'm next to a culvert, I said. Control doesn't always route our voice back, but they can if the ECP has given them a clean path. Tonight it sounded like they were doing everything the system would let them. Caller, police, she said over the patch, that calm tone that stops other people from shaking. If you can hear us, tap your phone twice. There was road noise, a breath, and then 2 soft taps. Not from the world. From the line. From a person. I won't pretend that didn't put something cold under my ribs. It's not fear. It's that feeling you get when you realize you're actually talking to someone you can't see at all. Copy, I said softly, mostly to myself. We're here. I lay on my stomach at the lip and shone the torch in, then killed it to let my eyes correct, then brought it back. Concrete, a film of dust, a small scrap of foil gum wrapper caught in a corner, a little smear where a shoe had made its opinion known in the last day or so, and then had dust settle back on it like a shrug. No glint of phone, no glint of hazard light off anything. The IRU driver came up beside me with the respect of someone who knows what it is to stand too close to traffic for a living. How you going, mate? Open line, 000. AML puts it right about here, I said. Elevation says down. Heard taps on the line. I tipped my torch toward the culvert. He nodded, looked where my beam went, and then lifted his gaze to the wire rope. We'll put out a few witches. You want the attenuator truck? We can hard close lane 1. Give me 2 minutes, I said. We'll do it if I'm going inside. The line in my ear crackled just the digital version of a breath and gave me a new sound. A door ajar chime from a late model car. Not loud. The kind of sound you hear when it's quiet, and you realize you've been hearing it for some time. Then, very faintly, someone said something like, "Wait." The word dragged a little, the way voices do over speaker if the phone's face down somewhere. Esta, we heard a word, I said. You get that? Affirmative, she said. 1 syllable. Wait is our best guess. Caller's line quality is poor but consistent. We have no rollover to voicemail when we call back. Device remains in emergency call mode. I've been doing this long enough to have a list in my head of explanations that belong to the world the same way fences and phones do. AML goes a bit weird. The ECP has an old recording stuck behind a switch somewhere. Someone dropped their handset under a seat after it auto-dialed. And then there's a second list. The second list isn't many items. It's mostly just. Sometimes the order of things gets confused for a little while. I slid down into the cutting and walked the embankment a few meters north and south. The grass was crisp enough to make its own quiet, cracking sound underfoot. In one patch, just past the culvert, there was a false oval where the frost hadn't settled as thick. Not quite a footprint, not far from one. The kind of absence you get when something that was warm had been there and wasn't now. I put my glove over it for a second, silly as that is, and felt the colder air push against my skin. 431. IRU, the driver said. We'll hold 2 lanes. You do what you need. Cheers, I said, and crouched again at the mouth of the culvert, considering the realities. Inside, it's a meter, and a bit high. Enough for a grown human to crab walk if they have the patience. It runs under the northbound lanes and exits into a drain on the far side. If someone had gotten in here, they'd have tracked dust in a way I'd see with this torch. Nothing fresh. No drag marks. But the elevation and the taps and the chime pulled at me with the gentle insistence of a string tied to a sleeve. Esta, can you ask the caller to press a key when they hear me knock? I said. Then I knocked on the top face of the culvert. 3 soft knocks that came back as a dull drum inside the box. After a second in my ear, 2 pips. If you hand me a map and a compass and tell me north is behind me, I'll ask your compass if it agrees. I had a person agreeing with me from inside a call. and the rest of the world saying I was looking at a piece of concrete and some dust. We held it for 10 minutes like that. IRU, doing the triangle of light the way they do. Trucks moving out a lane in a polite river around us. The overheads being adult and patient. In that time we got 2 more words on the line, spaced minutes apart, like a slow heartbeat. Door. And then, later, blue. Door, blue, I said under my breath. And my eyes went up to the little blue emergency marker post that sits on the shoulder every kilometer or so. And then farther, to the emergency refuge bay a few hundred meters up with its SOS phone that calls us when someone presses the button. IRU. I'm going to walk forward to the next refuge, I said. Hold this spot. The refuge sat like a tidy pocket in the verge. Chevrons clean. SOS phone with its green status LED glowing. The box was cool to the touch and smelled like warm plastic when I opened it. I pressed the button and got the usual chime in the neutral operator voice. Emergency telephone. Which service do you require? Police, I said, feeling silly for a second, like I'd rung my own front doorbell. Just checking status. Any recent activation? Negative, she said. Last call from this handset was yesterday, 16:10 hours. I hung it back and looked at the little blue sign again, the one with the kilometer number and the arrow and the phone icon. Blue. Door. The only doors within 50 meters were the ones on my car and the culvert flap further down, which is a steel hatch that road crews can open to clear debris. It sits in the verge like a secret most people never notice. I went back, cut across the grass, found the hatch and put my fingers under its lip. It's meant to be opened with a tool, but a person can pry if they ask nicely and the steel's in the mood. It groaned up a little, with that noise old swing sets used to make, and a breath of air came out that smelled like wet dust and not much else. I put the torch in. Just the culvert again, only from the side. No phone, no car, no person. Just the sense that I had opened the right thing and looked at the right nothing. ESTA, 431. We've got nothing located. Caller line still open? I said. Affirmative, she said. We're still hearing the gentle tick. We had a single instance of what sounded like a satellite navigation voice, saying, recal, and then cutting. A, M, L, shows. Device remains within the same small area. Timestamps normal. We will try a text to 911 analog. Pardon me, text to 000. Zero messaging through AML channel. Stand by. They can do that now. Push a message to the device that says, "This is police. Reply if you can." It saved more than a few folks. We waited. The line in my ear stayed exactly as it had been. Road noise that wasn't road noise. A tick that might have been hazards and might have been the rhythm of a person's breathing on a microphone. No text reply. IRU's boss came up on their channel and bled onto ours. We've got cameras in the area. Nothing on the last pass except your beacons. We had a blip on ANPR Rigo that vanished between 2 points at 2-6. Could be a line of sight thing. Could be nothing. The worst thing about these calls is not the fear. It's the ordinary possibilities you can't close. Someone slides into the median and leaves nothing but 2 lines in the dew that evaporate by first light. A car sits for a minute with hazards on and then moves on, happy, while the network keeps a ghost of it on our board. A person taps a phone that isn't theirs in a car that isn't on this road. 431, ESTA said after a while. The line has terminated. No further contact. AML device no longer reporting. We've logged the recording. IRU is content to reopen when you are. Copy, I said. And I stood with my hand on the wire rope for another 30 seconds because I didn't want to walk away without saying the thing out loud that gets said inside our heads most shifts. Whoever you are, we came as far as we could. If you need us again, we'll hear you. We opened it. The overheads lifted their red crosses like someone had told them a stress had passed and they believed it. The trucks filled the space we gave them like water finding its shape. IRU rolled off with a little honk, the friendly kind. I sat in the car and filled out the CAD. 000 open line. AML present. On scene. Negative. For any vehicle. Culvert checked. Hatch opened. No person located. IRU present. Lane management enacted. Line terminated at 227. Recontact negative. You learn to write without saying the unsayable. Reports are for facts, not impressions. At 7, when I was off the road and the sun had taken the frost for itself, I rang ESTA for the audio. They sent it through with a note that said, "Interesting one," in the subject line. I put headphones on at my kitchen bench and listened to a recording of a thing I had lived, which is a strange experience. The chime was there, the tick. Twice, a door ajar tone. Once, a sat-nav half-word that could be recalculating and could be my brain. The taps. Wait. Door. Blue. No breathing that would give me a stranger's lungs to match to my own memory of standing in the grass under a sky too big for nothing to be in it. The metadata on the file said exactly what you want metadata to say. Nothing weird. Timestamps lined up with the clock on my dash. The elevation was what it was. A day later, the IRU boss sent me a clipped screenshot from their maintenance system. It was a job sheet from 3 years prior, same month. Culvert clearance at KP 54, northbound. Debris removal, refit hatch, test SOS. The notes had a line about a driver calling 0000 for a breakdown at almost the same coordinates. Back then, they still had the old-style SOS box near that refuge, and they'd upgraded it since. He put nothing else in the email. Bless him. He didn't need to. We both know how the road keeps and forgets things on its own schedule. I don't have a neat ending. You won't get one from me. The world is mostly a tidy chain of cause and effect with the odd kink, and on nights like that, my job is to patrol the kinks and straighten the ones I can. I drive past KP 54 most shifts. Some nights I don't think of it. Some nights I do. And I crack the window the same small amount and listen for a chime that's only in my head now. Every once in a while I stop in that same bay and get out and touch the wire rope with 2 fingers, and I say, "All right," to no one. Devices don't hear you. People do. If someone was in a culvert miles from where I was standing, on some other road, and the system tangled enough to make us neighbors for 12 minutes, well, we did what we could. I added a habit I don't admit to on paper. When I walk past a blue marker now, the small ones with the arrows and the phone icon, I give it a tap with the back of my knuckles. Not a thing anyone would hear. Just enough for me to know I've registered a door, and its color, and the fact that doors are for going through when you can and waiting beside when you can't. In a job where you measure your life by chainages and call signs and the repeating patience of asphalt, that feels like permission to sleep after. And most days I do. Story number 5. I work nights with the Autobahnpolizei, the motorway police. After midnight, the Autobahn turns into a long, disciplined breath headlights threading in steady strings. The cat's eyes rising and dropping in a rhythm you can set your own heartbeat to. On our stretch, the A9 down through the Holodau, there's a particular feel to the air. Pine from the woods when the wind is wrong, cold tile smell under the overpasses, the dry rustle of the noise barriers that line the villages. The road here has good bones. The lanes are wide, the shoulders honest, the emergency bays tucked cleanly into the right places. You can feel the engineering even when it's quiet. My call sign that winter was 2 to 15. We take our orders from the Leitstelle, the control room, and for the road, we work with the Verkehrscentrale, the traffic center that can paint the overhead signs and push warnings onto car radios. At 2 in the morning, the voices on the radio are soft and exact, the way people get when they understand that calm is a tool. The night in question was cold without frost. The digital signs showed a neutral 120, nothing to warn of. The traffic was light long-haul lorries most of all, a few cars between Ingolstadt and Munich. I was running southbound, just past the Langenbruck junction, when the Leitstelle came up. Streifenwagen 2 to 15 Leitstelle. Multiple 110 calls for a possible Falschfahrer, wrong-way driver, reported between kilometer 254 and 256, southbound carriageway. Additional, open line from Notrefsoil, emergency call pillar, at KM 254.8, no voice. Verkehrscentrale is setting warnings. Can you attend? 2 to 15, for stand-in, I said. 2 minutes to 254. Any description? Negative. Callers reported oncoming headlights in the left lane. Then nothing. One caller disconnected. The Notrefsoil shows line seized. No audio on NRT and beyond ventilation. And a low tone. We'll patch you the pillar line. The words do something to your eyes, even when you know better. Your gaze starts pulling for shapes that don't belong, light in the wrong place. The Verkehrszentrale put up the standard text on the matrix boards at once. Achtung! Falschfahrer zwischen 254 und 256. Rechts fahren. Nicht überholen. Keep right. Do not overtake. They lowered the speed to 80, and above lane 1 they threw a red X. I brought the Blaulicht up blues only and left the siren off. Sondersignal has its time and place. On a nearly empty Autobahn, you can do a lot with light. The traffic ahead did what it was supposed to. The cars moved right. The lorries blinked hazards twice and thanks. I slid into the left lane for a moment to clear my view up the long straight, and then settled back to the center. The light plank, the guardrail, wore a thin coat of something like moisture that caught the blue in little honest glints. The patch dropped into my ear like someone opening a small window. It wasn't the police radio. It was the emergency pillar line, conferenced into my car. I heard the tunnel-sounding hush of moving air, and then, faint and far, the little three-tone attention signal these old pillars sometimes give when the line is open. Not the SOS operator, just the pillar admitting its own awareness. Underneath, if I let my brain do its learned tricks, there was a regular click, 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 at a pace you could call hazard lights if you needed to name it. Lightstell to 2 to 15. Additional. Verkehrszentrale has issued a Verkehrsfunk warning traffic radio. RDS. Radio stations. Will carry the message now. We have loop sensors on the 255 exit ramp, showing opposite direction activation for 1 second, then normal. Copy, I said. The loop sensors that sit under the asphalt can tell you direction of travel when a metal mass crosses. They're reliable, but not infallible. 1 second can be a phantom, a metal trolley on a tow truck, a misread shadow. The kilometer posts came up on the right in their patient rhythm. 254, 254.2. I drifted to put my car where it could do the most good. If something came at me half across the left lane, arrow board flashing to push people right. But there was nothing in the beam ahead except the diligent white of lane markings. My eyes caught a flicker far forward, low, red, then it died. If you were a poet, you'd call it hazard lights winking, the way a person puts a hand up and then takes it back. 2 to 15, Lightstell said. Note, the Notrefsoil at 250, 4.8 is in the median, on the left side. We have old pillars here. Use caution if you step out. Verstanden. I'll be out on foot, I said, but not yet. First you place your car. Make a safe wedge of light. The A9, at that point, has a left side emergency bay cut into the median a few hundred meters beyond the post. I aimed for that, bled off speed to 40, and took the bait cleanly, letting the striping guide me in. You feel very human when you open the door onto a live motorway. Even with everything closed and disciplined, the air has a pressure to it, a depth. The beacon at my rear made the noise barrier to my left flash on-off in rectangular pulses. I took the hand torch and stepped into the dead lane, and then into the bay itself. The median here has a split barrier, a concrete wall for the first half meter, then a run of steel. The Notrefsoil stood just beyond, an orange pillar with a white triangle and a black phone symbol, an older model that had seen a lot of winters. 2 to 15 at km 250, 4.8, I said on the radio. Pillar present, door closed, line shows active via the patch. I pressed the little lever that opens the pillar's door. It gave under my fingers. Inside, the handset sat ready, fat cord coiled, the big red call button lit steady. The little window fogged for a breath when I leaned near, then cleared. I didn't touch the handset. People are superstitious about interrupting a line that may be giving someone a path. There are parts of this job where you respect even the possibility of a connection. Lightstell asked the pillar line if the caller can press the button twice, I said, keeping my voice low, which is absurd against the motor noise. But you don't shout into quiet, even when the quiet is a machine. Pillar line. Police, the dispatcher said, the formality fitting into the oddness. If you can hear, press the button twice. We waited. The patch in my ear gave the three tones low, patient. And then, after 5 seconds, 2 little tactile clicks came through. Not electronic beeps. The mechanical affirmation of a button being pressed by a human hand. I exhaled. It wasn't fear. It was relief at not being alone in a mystery. "Copy, we've got confirmation," I said. "Ask caller if they can see my blue lights." A pause. Then nothing. The three tones again, slow. The hazard click like rhythm returned, then drifted out of time, as if a battery were dying in the idea of a car. Traffic radio cut through, as if someone had leaned into the car with a portable set. "Achtung, Achtung," the announcer said in that practiced voice. "Falschfahrer auf der A9 zwischen Langenbruck und Holledau. Bitte rechts fahren und nicht überholen." The warning was my own warning, now reflected back. Over the top of it, in my other ear, my GPS muttered its own empty counsel in German. "Bitte wenden. Wenn möglich, please turn around when possible." And I almost laughed in the dark because it was the last instruction we needed to hear on a night like this. I walked the median a dozen paces north and south from the pillar. The concrete had collected the day's faint warmth and was giving it back in a way that drew the cold to itself. On the steel barrier, at shoulder height, there was a clean rectangle where the condensation hadn't formed as thick as nearby, like someone had leaned a flat object there and then removed it. 6 hand widths across, 2 down. A coat? A warning triangle? The sort of ordinary thing that leaves ordinary impressions. Lightstel to 2 to 15. Verkehr Central reports no visual on cameras due to glare. The ANPR camera Kennzeichenerfassung at the 255 overpass is time stamped 2 minutes ahead. We're correcting. Old maintenance offset. The clock slippage again, the little timeouts that become a theme once you start looking for them. You put a hand on the world, and it gives you a fractionally different time. You note it and you move on. Ask the caller to describe what they see using the board inside the pillar, I said. Some of the older units have a sticker with pictograms: fire, injury, breakdown. If someone can't speak, they can point, and the operator will translate the button presses. Ours had been updated sometime in the last few years. The pictogram label was present, but half faded. There was a small, intact part under the handset cradle that showed a blue triangle for the emergency bay, a white door with an arrow. "Pillar line, police," the dispatcher said. "If you can, press once for vehicle stopped, twice for collision, 3 for person in danger." We listened. Once, a delay. Once again, nothing for 3. The pillar line breathed its 3-tone and went quiet, but for that thin click and a rhythm my brain refused not to label hazard lights. "Verstanden," I said. Vehicle stopped. No collision. I tried a different track. Ask if they are on the left. The old pillars don't know left from right. People do. The dispatcher kept it simple. "Are you near the middle wall?" Press once for yes. A single click through the line. "Okay," I said. "I'm there." I put my palm on the concrete wall, feeling its cool, and then on the steel rail above it, feeling a cold that stung. The rails sometimes ring if the right kind of wind hits them. Tonight they were mute. A lorry rolled past in the right lane, obedient to the red X above the left. Its driver gave me the long courtesy blink. The breath of it pushed my jacket and then was gone, leaving a negative quiet. In that negative, the pillar line gave one human word, spoken in a small voice that had to be close to the handset to be heard. It was German, and simple. "Hinter." Behind. Behind what? The wall? The bay? The pillar? I turned with my light and swept the median bay, took in its clean lines and the grit that gathers in every corner no matter how soft the cleaner's brushes are. There was a service door 10 meters south, the kind that opens into the narrow space you can walk behind the noise barrier to get to a maintenance point. It was flush, steel, with a tiny testing sticker. It had a keyhole and a lever that was sprung. "Lightstel, I'm checking a service door," I said. "I will not pass through just to check." "Verstanden," the dispatcher said. "Verkehr Centrale confirms no maintenance scheduled." I tried the lever. It moved a centimeter and hit a stop locked. The metal felt colder under my glove than the night deserved. The seam of the door showed a clean line through the dust where it had been opened at some point earlier in the week or month. That meant nothing special, and it meant everything you wanted it to mean. "Ask the caller if they can hear my knock," I said. I knocked twice with my knuckles, feeling silly and serious at once. The pillar line gave 2 clicks a second later. Not electronic. Human. It's okay, I said to the door in the air, and to the version of the person who might be behind whatever you decide the word behind means. We're here. The lightstell kept the threads taut. We're extending the warning to both directions, she said. Verkeer Central will keep the red X. Autobahnmeisterei, the road maintenance crew, are sending a vehicle. The Autobahnmeisterei is our partner in practicalities. They bring cones and a daily understanding of the road's body. We held our little wedge of quiet for 10 minutes. In that time, the pillar line gave 2 more words. Tour. Door. Blau. Blue. A person who could make only single words choosing those 2. I looked at the pillar door, the blue triangle on the pictogram, the blue of my beacons washing the wall. The rational part of my head had taken all the explanation it needed. The other part of my head still sought a person in a space. The line ended itself. You can hear the difference between a person deciding and a system deciding. This was a system ending a clean removal of voltage. The 3 tones sounded one last time, and then the line went still. The red button light on the pillar faded to dark. The world felt a fraction larger, as if a boundary you didn't know was there had been taken away. Lightstell to 2 to 15. Pillar line terminated. No ability to call back. We'll log the audio. ANPR shows a vehicle stopping at 254.8 at 157 and leaving at 159 2 nights ago in the left bay. No current stop. The Autobahnmeisterei pickup arrived with a gentle logic, its yellow beacon drawing a different kind of punctuation line along the wall. 2 men got out, one older with the walk of someone who lifts proper every day, the other younger. They looked at my car, my posture, and read the scene their way. Al's gut? The older one asked, everything good? Open line from the pillar, I said. Wrong way reports, that didn't hold. No vehicle. He nodded, as if that were a normal sentence in our line of work. It is. We walked the median together, the older man running a hand across the wall in the steel the way you might pat a horse's flank to judge mood. At the threshold to the service door he stopped, lowered his head to the seam, and sniffed. Cold. No foot smell, he said, practical and silly and exactly right as an observation. Then he pointed his chin at the concrete floor of the bay. Here. There was a small, perfect oval, where moisture had not taken the surface as evenly as the rest. Not a footprint, just a warm place had been here, recently. The way a knee or a bag sets its temporary claim. We closed it. The Verkeer Centrale lifted the warning. The radio went back to the ordinary music of night, this lorry, that roadside check. I sat in the car in the median bay and wrote the line into the CAD. Multiple 110 calls for wrong. Way driver at KM, 254. 256. No vehicle located. Emergency pillar at 254,8 sized line. Open audio. Tunnel-like air. 3 low tones. Human words. Behind. Door. Blue. And 2-button confirmation when prompted. No person seen. Service door secure. ANPR negative for current. Verkeer Centrale warnings issued and rescinded. Autobahnmeisterei present. It looks thin on paper. It felt thick in the moment. Back at the station at dawn, the coffee tastes like it's been filtered through the same metal every night for 20 years. We read the prior's reports when something itches. And this did. 3 winters earlier, same week, same kilometer. Single vehicle came to a stop in the left bay, called 110 from the pillar. Line recorded ventilation, and 3 tones, and 1 human word. The rest you can fill with your imagination if you want to be unkind to yourself. The pillar hardware had been replaced since. Some of the old ones had been retired, some moved. The Verkeer Centrale sent over the matrices log for the night. The red X above the left lane had put itself on 3 seconds before the first 110 caller dialed. It happens. The system has sensors and priorities, and it sometimes knows things before we tell it to know them. The ANPR camera on the overpass stamped photos 2 minutes ahead until someone corrected its server. The traffic radio warning used my own words like a loop. I don't do the gift shop version of this job. I don't sell people a haunted Autobahn. We have systems on systems, and they are very good. And sometimes they are odd in little ways because clocks drift and wires remember their old jobs for a heartbeat. But I also won't make fun of the way a place holds onto an echo. I drove through that spot a week later, again at 2 in the morning. Again with the A9 moving like a river that has learned to be quiet. I left the radio low, cracked the window enough to let the cold kiss a knuckle, and watched the median for the orange of the pillar. It sat there as it had always sat. A tool in a place where tools matter. I didn't stop. I didn't need to. I touched the steering wheel exactly at kilometer 254.8 and said nothing into the car, because sometimes that's the respectful thing, to let the road have its unclaimed pieces without adding your own. If you want a moral, you won't get it from me. The night gave me a task. Go where a voice no one could find had asked for someone to come, stand with it until it was done, and then leave the place better than I found it. That's the job. The rest is stories, and we tell those to each other quietly, with the volume turned down, on the last part of the shift when the Autobahn has turned into an honest, breathing line you can set your heartbeat to, and everyone else is asleep. Story number 6. I'm with the Gendarmerie EDSR, the highway squad nights on the autoroute. On our patch, it's the A7 most of the time. The Autoroute du Soleil, which after midnight is a quiet animal. Truck headlights stack up like beads far apart, and the noise barriers along the villages turn the wind into a tuned instrument. You learn to read the PK markers point kilometrique, white posts with black numbers like their punctuation in a sentence only we bother with. I work with Vinci Autoroute's PC Sécurité and the Péage teams. They know their road like we know ours. Past 1 in the morning, it's a handful of cars, a lot of lorries, and the click of your own indicator when you change lanes under a sky so clear you can hear the cold. It was a dry winter night. The Mistral had calmed. I was sitting northbound in a refuge bay not far from Vienne, engine on low idle, heater on my boots, writing a note that could wait. The radio hissed the way it does when control is leaning into a mic. Their tone at night is a tool calm, exact. Echo Douan control. We've received multiple 17 over 112 calls, reporting an open intercom at the Péage de Vienne, lane 5, northbound. Vinci PC reports a stuck open line on the lane interphone, no visible vehicle. They're patching audio to us. Can you attend? Echudeos, Jesu, I said. 2 minutes. Any other units? Negative for now. PC Sécurité says their CCTV is in maintenance on the left half of the plaza. Traffic is light. They've locked lane 5 to stop entries. Interphone line reads active. No operator audio. You'll get the patch. You can know a place so well you don't have to think to get there. The Péage threw its own light into the sky from a kilometer out, a petal of fluorescence. The matrix signs, PMV, had flipped to a simple warning. Incident Péage Vienne ralentissez. The Liberty lanes the Telepéage with the blue T over them show their little night habit of blinking to remind you they're ready for a badge, the way a sleeping dog opens one eye without moving. I took the ramp for the staff access, slid along the cones, and placed the car just before the island for lane 5 so my rear lights protected the space. Blues only, no deux-tons. No reason to shout at people doing their best to be at home. Vinci's chef de court came in on our radio like she'd been standing beside me. They can patch their intercoms into our channel when they need. Gendarmerie, this is PC Sécurité. You're at lane 5. We've got its interphone seized. No voice. You should hear the patch. The patch settled in my ear like a small room opening inside a larger one. Fluorescent hum. The faint hiss of road beyond glass. Then, every 6 seconds, a tidy bip-bip. The Liberty reader's acknowledgement. The kind of beep you hear when a badge passes under the arch. Only there was no car, no badge, and the barrier arm in lane 5 sat down and very still. Overhead, the blue T was dark. The lane had been red-crossed. The beep shouldn't have been there. The loop's metal coils in the pavement that no mass showed no car. The laser curtain showed no interruption. The lane thought it was empty and busy at once. PC, confirm lane 5 is closed to entry. I said. Confirmed. Lane 5 closed, she said. We've locked it in the system. The Liberty reader is still registering attempts. The barrier is down. We see nothing on the deck. Our cameras on that side are in partial maintenance. We have 2 PTZs off. I'm sorry. No apology. I stepped out. The air had that electrical warmth these plazas carry, even in winter switchgear breathing behind fiberglass cladding. The smell of hot plastic and clean concrete. I walked to the face of the island. Lane 5's intercom was a round stainless speaker with a button. Simple. Above it, a small lamp showed green to say the line was alive. Control, Echo 2, un on foot, péage Vienne, Lane 5. I said softly because the night makes you keep your voice small. Interphone shows active, no vehicle present. The intercom grill was cool to my glove, and then warmer under it, as if the metal itself had a memory. I put my ear near without touching and listened. The patch gave me fluorescent hum, and at the very edge, a tick like a hazard if you needed a name for it. The bip-bip of the badge reader came at intervals that made my jaw set polite, insistent, as if a driver had stopped dead under the arch, trying and trying again. PC, we're hearing badge beeps, I said. Do you see any tag ID on your side? She exhaled in a way that made my own breath slow. We do, and we don't. The reader log shows a token present bit every 6 seconds, but the CRC is badge checksum fails. It's like a badge that wants to be real but isn't. It's not enough to raise the barrier. There's no weight on the loop, no laser curtain cut, but the interphone is held. You make a triangle of routine out of oddness. Anchor 1. My car. Lights. Angled to protect. Anchor 2. Eyes on the ground, looking for what roads leave when they've acquired a story skid powder, a coin on edge, fresh rubber scrub. Anchor 3. Someone in my ear who can see things I can't. I moved my beam along the deck line. Nighttime toll concrete is polished by tires and salt. It shows smears the way a chalkboard shows old words to someone who knows where to look. Between lanes 4 and 5, at bumper height on the bollard, there was a clean oval where condensation hadn't formed fully. Warmth had stood there recently. The size and height matched a human head leaning and waiting, or a bag resting against metal. You can't prove it with a photograph. You feel it with the part of your eyes that's used to this. I pressed the interphone button gently. It has that local tactile feel, no click in the speaker, just a change in side tone. PC heard me, but a driver in a car would have heard me too. Police, I said in the plainest French, voice pitched like I was talking to someone in a dark room. If you can hear me, press your horn, or press anything. Say something. The response was not a horn. It was 2 soft taps through the line, like fingernails on the speaker mesh, quiet and sure, and then a single, almost embarrassed. Allo? As if someone had put their mouth close to cloth. PC, I said, eyes up out of habit even though there was nothing to see. We have potential live voice. Keep recording. Recording, she said. The line timer on our system is strange. It reads 3:7. Our clock is 2:41. We're checking our server. We keep meeting this lately systems while they work, showing a time that belongs to a slightly different night. I make a note, internal, and move on. The job is what's in front of you. I walked behind the toll islands to the service corridor that runs like a spine. It's the bit nobody sees, the little door, the gray floor paint, the heat that comes out of cabinets like animals sleeping. The door for lane 5 had a brushed face and a small key cylinder. I tried the handle. Locked. Obviously. But the metal was slightly warmer than the door for lane 4. Not by much. Enough to know someone had touched it recently, or that the equipment behind had been working just a little harder. PC, I said. I'm at the rear service door for lane 5. Any maintenance tonight? Negative, she said. We had a maintenance 3 nights ago camera swap. Back doors would have been opened then. Nothing since. She paused. The interphone is still held. We're hearing badge beeps. No one appears under the arch on any working cam. We're getting a second line now, 112 from a mobile. Same cell. Open line. No voice. Control patched the second call into my other ear. 2 rooms in my head now. 1 fluorescent, 1 wind. The mobile call had the air of a car-soft cabin movement, a seatbelt chime once, and then the long, slow silence you get when the person holding the phone doesn't breathe the way you expect. The AML data advanced mobile location came through our CAD on the car screen as a dot roughly where I was standing. It put the device inside a circle 20 meters wide, altitude off by a few meters. which is what buildings do to it at a péage with all its metal. "Caller, if you can hear us, this is the police," Control said in a voice that makes people stay on lines. "Press any key. 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, nothing." Then the interphone gave me its own inhabited noise, the sound of someone dampening breath near a grill. In French, a small voice said, "Je n'arrive pas à passer." I can't get through. And then, "J'attends. I'm waiting." "PC, can you ask the caller interphone to name what they see?" I said. It was a silly instruction across equipment, but she knew what I meant. "Interphone, here is péage. Describe lights?" The operator on her side said in the slow, customer service French you use for travelers. There was a pause. Then, as if timed with the bip of the badge reader, blue. Blue. My beacons washed the lanes in a soft, pulsing blue. The Liberty signs over the other lanes had their blue T crossed by red. Lane 5's blue was dark. If someone were seeing blue, they were seeing me, or the very idea of the lane itself being open again. We had neither. I rubbed condensation off my glove on the intercom grill out of habit. It made no difference. The line belonged to itself. A Liberty lane makes 3 sounds when a car uses it: the reader's bip, the barrier's motor whir, and the soft clack of the arm pivot. Tonight we had only the bip. No whir. No clack. A shadow from a lorry in lane 3 came across the deck, like a thoughtful hand reaching for something and then drawing back. The plaza staff, 2 agents in reflective vests, kept to the edges, polite, giving me the space they would want if our jobs were reversed. "Echo de, we have one more report," Control said. 3 years ago, same péage, lane 5. A vehicle stopped under the arch, called 17, line opened, then dropped, found at dawn. Vinci replaced the reader that week, report archived. I don't trade in ghost stories at work, but I'm not blind to the way places pick up accents. There are nights when the very normal things, a beep, a chime, a breath, start to stack in a way that makes you say quiet words to an empty space. "Tell the interphone we are here," I said to PC. "And that we see blue. Ask if they see a T. The Liber T." She repeated my words on her side, then listened. The interphone gave 2 tiny taps again. Confirmations. It felt like playing a memory, back to the present. I could have pressed the barrier arm down with 2 fingers and felt very stupid. Instead, I waited and listened. I put my hand flat on the deck between 4 and 5. Concrete holds heat long enough to make thumbprints in your sense of logic. There was a small oval the size of a front tire that ran under the center of lane 5, and then not a track, not a smear, just a section where the night hadn't settled evenly. It's nothing you can show. It's a thing your skin knows. "PC," I said, "do you have the event logs for the Liberty reader? Anything that looks like a tag data point?" "We do," she said, still typing. You could hear keys in the quiet. "It shows a tag ID partial. Checksum fails at 2 hours 33 minutes and 12 seconds. 2 hours 33 minutes and 18 seconds. 2 hours 33 minutes and 24 seconds. 6-second intervals. The present bit toggles, but the valid stays false. The lane controller thinks nothing is there, and yet something keeps asking. Something asking. That got under my vest in a way nothing should. There's a trick the péage technicians taught me years ago. The Liberty arch can very slightly vary its beep if a tag is closer to the right coil versus the left. I stood with one boot on either edge of the lane, intercom at my shoulder, and listened for which side the bip sounded more pronounced. It's ridiculous, listening for stereo on a speaker the size of 2 fingers, but I heard it more right than left. I moved there. The interphone breathed. The mobile open line in my other ear carried a soft recalc-com, half of a navigation voice's recalculating, cut off mid-syllable. "Control," I said. "Ask the mobile caller to press a key when I knock on the intercom." I tapped the metal once, twice. The mobile call gave no tone, but the intercom gave a small, unpretty click in the middle of the hum, like someone's finger agreeing in a language made of surface and vibration. Echo Duong, control said after a quiet stretch where we were 3 people together and no one visible. Line on interphone is still open. Timer on Vinci's system shows 3:07. Our clock is 2:47. PC's server team says they have a known offset on that rack. They are correcting. As if to show off, the PMV at the far end of the plaza beyond the canopy flipped from incident to voie réservée télépéage over lane 5 for half a second. The red cross disappeared. The blue T lit. The barrier did not lift. Then the sign corrected itself like a person startled awake who pretends they weren't sleeping. PC swore softly in my ear and then apologized for swearing. The interphone gave me one more human thing. Not a word. A sigh, the relieved kind you hear when someone sees help. It was followed by the double tap we'd heard twice before. That did the job for me that nothing else could do. I said the thing aloud that you don't put in reports because reports eat facts and leave feelings on the plate. We're here, I said to the mesh, to the lane, to the idea. You're not alone. The line cut. You could feel the system choose. The green indicator above the interphone went from alive to dead in a breath. The bip of the tag reader stopped. It left a space like those blank bits on old tapes where you think you can still hear music. Control, PC said immediately. Interphone line released. Lane 5 back in idle. No images to show for it. We're saving the audio. I stood, because you stand. You don't run from a nothing you've made into an address. One of the plaza agents, older, moved closer with a slow, respectful gait. Vous avez eu quelqu'un? He asked. You had someone? I had someone, I said, and it was both true and not useful. We opened the lane in stages. PC flicked the overheads to their proper state. The blue T lit solid, then dark. The barrier stayed down, then lifted once, then down, then settled. The plaza went back to being a controlled place where physics obeyed. A car took lane 3, paid at a coin basket. The old way coins clinked into plastic, and a dog barked softly in the back seat as they rolled. Normality reasserted itself with the sound of coins. I sat in my car and wrote the things that are easy to write. Péage VN lane 5. Open interphone. No vehicle present. Audio. Fluorescent Liberty beep at 6-second intervals. Human voice faint. Allô. Je n'arrive pas à passer. J'attends. Bleu. Confirmation by taps. Mobile 112 open line concurrent cabin noise. Single sat-nav fragment. Vinci cameras partially down for maintenance. Liberty reader logs show repeated partial tag ID with CRC error. Lane controller did not lift barrier. Event ended at 2:49. Vinci server time offset noted. That's the chalk. The rest is weather. At 8, I went by the PC Securité office on my way off and had a coffee that tasted like a fluorescent light would if it could be made into a drink. The chef de court pulled up the logs. She turned the screen with a little smile that meant, see what you want to see, but here are the facts. The interphone recorded 8 minutes and 22 seconds of line hold. The Liberty reader's buffer showed a string of half messages, spaced like a heartbeat. There was a photograph from the plaza security camera of lane 5 at 02:50. A blue bloom where my car had been. A sheen on the deck. Nobody. She flipped to a report from 3 winters prior. Lane 5. Same hour. A driver had stopped, called on the intercom, then hung up halfway because another driver had knocked on their window to help. They'd been found and sorted before anyone in uniform arrived. The intercom line back then had also recorded a comically stubborn badge beep from an empty arch, the log with the same CRC error. The technician's note read, reader replaced. Old unit, sometimes latched on phantom tag after power dip. That went in a file. Good enough. Machines do that. They remember how to misbehave for a beat. 2 nights later, around the same hour, I rolled north, and the péage shone up at the sky like always. I slowed without thinking as I approached lane 5. Routine is its own survival. I felt silly and human. I pressed the interphone button for a second, like a person ringing a doorbell on a house they used to live in, and let it up right away because I had no cause. The speaker breathed the plaza back at me, air-conditioned air. Air that's learned to be inside even when it's outside. Then I walked away. We're practical in uniform. We put triangles on the road and tell the truth efficiently. but I keep a habit I don't name out loud. When I pass a barrier arm now, any barrier arm, the kind at a little car park in town, or the ones under these long roofs, I touch the end of it, just to tap with a knuckle if I can get away with it. Like knocking on a neighbor's door even if you don't need anything. Barriers are there to keep order. So are we. Neither of us wants to keep someone from getting through if they need to. Some nights the system is a loop. The time is off by half a song, and 2 small taps are the only language you share with somebody who's waiting. Story number 7. Nights on the 401 are their own weather. You can be under a clear sky and still feel snow that isn't their old squalls living in the barriers. The way truck wakes push air like invisible shoulders. I work nights with the Ontario Provincial Police, Highway Safety Division. Our patch runs from the edge of Trenton down toward Kingston and a bit beyond. A part of the highway the province calls straight, and the wind calls honest. I know the kilometer markers the way you know your porch steps. I can tell when I'm rolling past 585 because of how the noise barriers change the sound under the tires. The lights of the en route service centers are little islands you steer by when the radio goes quiet. That night was cold without frost. The sort of -8 that makes plastic harder if you tap it and gives guardrail posts halos of breath you don't see. The Provincial Communications Center PCC sat in my ear, calm as ever. At 2 in the morning, everyone in that room is a steady voice. We share the road with MTO's compass cameras and the maintenance folks who call themselves night supplementals. On good nights, we only see each other in a wave and a taillight blink. I was eastbound near mile 587, sitting behind a tractor trailer to let his wind do the work for a minute when PCC keyed up. OPP 513 PCC. We've got an automatic crash response from OnStar. They're patched to us now. Coordinates put it eastbound 401, near kilometer 589. No caller voice. Line held. Additional. A 911 from a mobile handset at roughly the same coordinate. Open line. No speech. Both lines active. MTO VMS engaged for lane 1 closure. 513 received, I said. 2 minutes out. Any units closer? Negative on closer. MTO's on the compass. Cameras have glare. OnStar says airbag deployment not confirmed. Collision sensors triggered. Battery health unknown. They'll come up on your car audio. OnStar lines don't sound like dispatch. They arrive in your world like someone sliding a glass panel open in a quiet kitchen. The advisor's voice is soft, trained to be a life preserver. This is OnStar. We've detected a possible crash. I have an open connection to the vehicle. No response from the occupant. GPS shows Highway 401 eastbound near kilometer 589. Police are en route. Can you hear me? You catch your own face in the windscreen when you hear that tone. It makes you stand a little straighter even when you're sitting. I brought the blues up, no siren, and the truck ahead eased to the middle lane. The VMS signs, MTO's big black boards, rolled to a simple message. Incident ahead. 80. Lane 1 closed. Above lane 1, the red X's blinked into life from a kilometer back. A string of little absolutes. PCC 513. I have the patch. Any vehicle descriptors, I asked. OnStar shows a late model sedan, VIN partially masked. They have an advisor listening. The 911 open line caller ID blocked. AML shows device static. Seatbelt chime heard once. I eased into lane 2, dropped my speed to match what the signs had asked, and let the space ahead fill with blue. The stretch at 589 dips under an overpass and then climbs. There's a culvert on the right and a cable barrier in the median that sings in your gloved fingers when it's been cold enough to matter. OnStar to officer, the advisor said, a soft urgency that made the hair on my arm pay attention. Our connection shows the vehicle's hazard indication active. I'm hearing a faint tick. The occupant is not responding to prompts. The vehicle's horn cannot be activated remotely on this model. Attempting to flash lights is not supported. I can maintain line, as long as the battery holds. Copy, I said. We're minutes out. MTO, can you move cameras to 589 and check the shoulder? They'll do it without you asking, but you ask so your hands have something to hold. Compass here. A traffic operations voice said on our shared channel, polite and not pretending to be a police voice. PTZ at Gananoque is flaring off headlights. We can't get a clean look. No obvious stopped object. Red X active over lane 1. I brought the car onto the shoulder as I passed 588.8 and let it coast, scanning for the glow you see when hazards reflect off aluminum rail. It wasn't there. The shoulder looked like itself salt-dulled asphalt, a strip of grit at the edge, a frozen cedar branch pointed at the sky like a finger. PCC 513 on scene, eastbound at 589, lane 1 closed by sign. I'll be out. The sound changes when you open your door at night. Even with everything empty, you notice the layers, the long white noise of road, the lighter hiss that is just air moving, the very quiet tick as your own car settles its exhaust. I took a torch and walked the white fog line with the beam angled low. No glass, no skid feather, no new scuff where the fog line paint would show it. The world had the expression of someone who's put something down and can't find it again. OnStar came in with the tiniest piece of the other world. I'm hearing an indicator tick. Every 1.5 seconds. It's consistent. Occupant not responding. Accelerometers show 0. Vehicle shows door ajar 3 minutes ago. Then closed. PCC. Have the 911 call still open? I said. Affirmative. We hear wind noise consistent with cabin fan. A single instance of a sat-nav voice fragment recall, then nothing. AML shows the device remains within 25 meters of your position. Elevation suggests -2 meters. Accuracy poor. -2 meters. I stood at the culvert and angled my light into the concrete box. Dry. A few leaves like little canoes. The kind of dust that settles after a month of nobody pushing it around. No slide mark. No obvious impact scrapes on the mouth. But you learn not to only believe what beams show you. I put 2 fingers on the cable barrier in the median. It held its cold like a string. Sometimes you can feel a ghost of a vibration if a big mass has passed and left its opinion in steel. It was as empty as it should be. OnStar, the advisor said, careful and steady. I'm going to attempt to call the vehicle back through a different channel. If we go quiet, that's why. Our system shows the call has been active for 11 minutes. My console clock reads 0307. I apologize, our server is undergoing maintenance. PCC. Can you confirm actual time? Time is 0241, PCC said. We have a noted offset on some third-party systems tonight. Not operationally significant. It shouldn't matter when a clock disagrees with you, but it does. It makes some part of your brain wonder what else is off by a minute here, 30 seconds there. I got down on a knee and pressed the back of my gloved hand to the white paint. The road keeps a temperature map. If you move slow enough, you can notice places that aren't like the other places. At the edge of the paint, just past where a front tire would come to a stop if someone had pulled right properly, there was a small patch that felt less cold. Not warm, less cold. The way a handprint looks in frost right before it disappears. 513 MTO, Compass said. We have a report from a plow 2 kilometers back. Operator says they saw hazards up ahead under the overpass for 1 blink, then nothing. They thought the car had moved off. No other reports. A plow knows what hazards look like in a storm. Even on a clear night, that carries weight. I moved forward, the red X's above lane 1 keeping everyone else obedient, the torch picking out ordinary litter and making it look like evidence. Under the overpass, sound narrows into a different note. The concrete roof pulls the road's music closer. OnStar, any occupant words? I asked. We had one, the advisor said. Very faint. Could be wait or door. We cannot confirm. I can prompt again. Do, I said still low. I put my palm flat on the guardrail. The galvanized steel was beaded with something that wasn't frost condensation from a day that had gone away. Near a post, there was a rectangle where it hadn't formed at all. The height matched a shoulder. OnStar to occupant, the advisor said, voice soft as the bottom of a lake. This is the police, and OnStar. If you can hear me, press any button, make a sound. In my other ear, PCC mirrored it onto the 911 line. It's strange and comforting to hear 2 different people be the same kind at once. The 911 call gave 2 taps like fingernails on a phone face down. The OnStar line gave nothing but the tick. My chest loosened a little anyway. That's the trouble with this job. You thank the air for the idea that you might not be alone. Copy, I said. We're with you. The en route at Mallory Town is 4 kilometers on. The blue sign for it sits at 589.2. Blue. The word hung in my mind for no reason, other than that it was the only color out here besides white and red. The 911 line, as if it had read my mind, gave a single word. Faint. Not from the OnStar call, from the phone line. Blue. It sounded like a person being careful not to fog glass. PCC, I said. We've got a word on the 911. Blue. Ask if they can see a sign, or a light. Caller, the call taker said, making each word a handhold. This is the police. If you can see a blue sign, press a key. If not, it's okay. A press came through, a single tone. Not loud, honest. When we lose people out here, one of the old sergeants told me my first week, it's not because they did something dramatic. It's because they did something ordinary and physics was in a mood. That came back to me while I stood with a hand on the rail and the road pretended it held nothing at all. A transport rolled by in lane 2. Driver gave the courtesy tap on the 4 ways to tell the one behind about me. His wake dragged a sleeve of air across my back. In the negative quiet after, the OnStar line carried a new sound. A door. A jar chime, polite and insistent. The kind that's meant to save you from yourself in a grocery parking lot. OnStar, I said. Your system shows door open? Momentary, the advisor said. Door open flagged 4 minutes ago, now closed. Battery voltage normal. Airbags not deployed. Occupant status unknown. I'm hearing breathing now, very shallow. I put my light down and listened with everything. You can hear a lot when you stop trying to make meaning and just let sound knock. The culvert mouth gave me nothing except the truth of concrete. The barrier gave me the echo of my own fingertips when I drummed. The space between the overpass piers held a weight of air that hadn't been there when I walked up. PCC to 513, the dispatcher said, with that carefully neutral note we use for history. For your awareness, 3 winters ago, at 589, we had a single vehicle off onto the shoulder. OnStar activation. Open line. Occupant unresponsive. Found by MTO at first light. Event concluded. MTO upgraded cameras in this area 6 months later. No other incidents. I didn't say anything to that. You make a little space in your head for it, and then do the job in the space the job gives you. OnStar. The advisor said quietly into my ear like she was whispering in a chapel. I'm going to stay on this line until you clear. The timer on my console reads 0307. I know it's wrong, I am logging your presence. Appreciated, I said. We held the wedge for 18 minutes. MTO kept the red X's honest, and drivers reasoned themselves out of habits, moving over one by one like water finding least resistance. I walked 30 meters past the overpass and 30 back. In that time, the lines gave me 3 more small things. A single, soft wait on the 911. The faint whir of a climate fan spooling down on OnStar, as if a car had turned itself to a lower heartbeat to save something, and once the polite, half-swallowed syllable of a nav voice that never got past recall. PCC, I said after a long nothing. We need to make a call on the closure. I've got no vehicle, no debris, no hazard beyond the idea of one. We've searched shoulder, median, culvert, negative. OnStar line still up? A breath. Negative, the advisor said. And I could hear in her tone the same little fall there would be in mine. The connection has been lost. Vehicle stopped reporting. We cannot re-establish. We will email incident logs to PCC. Tisha me'ot ve'achat line? I asked. Terminated, PCC said. No ability to call back. AML device no longer presenting. We'll hold the recording. We opened it in stages. The red X is lifted. The speed sign slid back to 100, as if nothing had wanted anything else from them. Traffic filled back in. I took my right glove off and pressed my knuckles to the guardrail post once, a thing I would never put in a report, and said, "All right," to a piece of metal. It's for me, not for it. I sat in the cruiser and wrote the chalk that gets recorded. OnStar, ACR, open line. 911, open line concurrent. On scene 239. No vehicle located. Negative debris. Shoulder and culvert checked. Barrier shows heat void consistent with recent contact. 911 audio. 2 key presses. Words. Blue. Wait. OnStar audio. Hazard tick. Door. Ajar chime. Shallow breathing. No speech. OnStar system clock offset noted. Compass. Cameras glare. Negative visuals. MTO. Advised. Cleared 258. It looks thin on CAD. It felt like a whole night. After shift, I drove to the detachment. The sky gone that soft gray that makes coffee taste like something you should apologize to your stomach for. PCC emailed the OnStar report to my inbox. The advisor had typed in the same careful language I use. Automatic crash response triggered at 2:36. GPS fix consistent with Y401 EBKM 589 plus or minus 15 meters. Impact not confirmed. Cabin audio indicates hazards. Chime. Occupant voice possible, unintelligible. Line terminated at 37 by remote system timeout due to inactivity. She'd appended a note. Server time at vendor site was out by to 20 minutes during maintenance. Corrected 512. The attachment included a waveform like a heart that had forgotten how to be a heart and become a metronome instead. MTO sent their own notes 2 days later, because they're as curious as we are when the road is strange. The Compass snapshot buffer had one frame at 2 hours 37 minutes and 14 seconds, with a smear of red in the shoulder under the overpass that could have been a tail lamp bloom or a reflection of my own light off the barrier. The ANPR camera on the nearby overpass had stamped images 2 minutes early for a few hours because a tech had replaced a server and not corrected its clock until 3:10. The plow's GPS log showed a little hesitation icon near 588.8 at 2:34, and then happy green all the way to Kingston. Their email ended with the line we all write when we cannot make a thing behave like data. We will continue to monitor. In this work, subtle is heavier than loud. It's quieter to say that sometimes a car seems to sit inside the idea of the highway without touching it. The ordinary explanations are enough most days. Phones butt dial 911. Telematics see bumps as impacts. Maintenance windows make clocks argue with each other. But I will tell you that at kilometer 589, eastbound, when the wind is steady and the overpass throat makes the traffic sound like a long, careful breath, I slow a touch. It's a courtesy. To whom? I couldn't say. A week after, I ran that stretch again at the same hour without trying to. Habit puts you places. The road looked exactly like itself. The VMS boards were blank and honest. The cable barrier wore its cold without drama. I cracked the window a finger and let the air lay a ribbon across my cheek. No tick, no chime, no breathing that wasn't mine. I rolled under the overpass and said nothing because the night had decided to be ordinary, and you don't go looking for extraordinary when the ordinary is the reason you get to go home. I keep one small ritual now that wouldn't make sense written down for someone who hasn't stood alone on shoulders at 2 in the morning. When I pass the little blue en route 4 kilometers sign, or any blue sign really, I tap the steering wheel twice at the bottom with my ring finger. The road doesn't need me to do it. The road is a machine with a country laid over it. But on nights when a voice says blue in the edge of your ear and you can't find the car it's in, you say something back that doesn't require an answer. Then you sleep, and you wake, and the markers go by again like porch steps you know by feel. Story number 8. I'm Traffico Guardia civil night shift out of the subsector that covers the A8 along the Cantabrian coast. Out here the motorway doesn't feel like the ones on the plateau. The A8 has weather that belongs to it. When the Atlantic breathes and the hills answer, fog comes in thin layers and thick sheets, sometimes both at once. The locals call it by names that make it sound like an animal. You learn the puntos kilometricos, like they're small towns. PK 536, where the grade begins to lift. PK 541, where the noise barrier's thin. PK 543, at the lay-by, just before the pass. Everyone knows, for fog warnings. At night, the PMV, our message boards, are small islands of pixel light, and the little white kilometer posts flick by like metronomes you can't help but keep time to. It was deep winter, dry and colder inland, but up here the air had that maritime softness even when it cut. I had the window cracked a finger and let the smell of wet stone and salt find its way under my collar. The radio, the Centro de Gestión de Tráfico del Noroeste, kept its night voice, precise, polite, the tone that keeps your own breath steady. We share this road with the Concesionaria's patrols on their parts, with the Brigadas de Conservación who will come at 3 in the morning for a fallen branch, with the 112 Galicia operators who can make disparate systems feel like one when it matters. At around 2:30, my call sign lit. Bravo 16, control said, voice flat and sure. 112 has an open line activation from a post SOS at PK 543, A8 Sentido Oviedo. No voice. The post shows seized line. CGT cameras are showing white out on that stretch. Fog sensors report visibility under 50 meters. We are lowering speeds to 60 and putting Nebla Precaución on PMV. Are you free to attend? End of 2. Bravo 16 en ruta, I said, and brought the blues up without the siren. You don't shout in fog. Sound reflects in ways that make people do the wrong thing. Any mobile calls matching? Affirmative, the operator said. 112 also has a mobile. 112 from the same segment. Open line, no speech. AML places the device within 20 meters of the post. Altitude inconsistent due to terrain. The stretcher, the hardware at the SOS shows door closed. Their technician is not on site tonight. We'll patch you the audio from the post. The patch arrived the way these old systems always do, like a stairwell with a light on you hadn't noticed. Behind the thin hiss, there was the breath of moving air you get in those fiberglass housings. Then, every few seconds, not high-pitched, not loud, 3 notes low, tidy. I've heard them on older roadside phones in more than one province. A system tone that means, I am alive and connected. Under that, if I let my brain go to work the way it has learned to, there was a faint, regular tick. Hazard lights are easy to project into any metronome once you do this job too long. I try to be stingy with that label. Tonight, the rhythm made it hard. The PMV ahead of me, half veiled by a gray curtain, switched from its generic fog warning to a specific Incidente Adelante 60. The lane control signs put a red X over the right lane. Traffic at that hour was mostly heavy vehicles. Their taillights made red islands hung in white. They behaved as they always do. Good drivers light 2 taps of their 4 ways to let the one behind them know they've seen the sign. Even fog has etiquette. At PK 543, there's a lay-by cut into the slope with a post and a camera pole that's always a little too proud of itself. I eased the patrol car into the wedge, so my rear made a barrier for anything that came up too quick, and stood a few seconds with my hand on the console before I opened the door, letting my ears tell me what the glass had kept soft. Fog doesn't always muffle. Tonight it took the road's breath and made it close, like a room with a low ceiling. Control, Bravo 16 on scene at 543. Lane 1 closed by signs. I will be on foot. Keep the post audio open. The SOS pillar was a familiar orange with a window under a small visor. Door closed. A green LED to say the line was alive, an amber one to say it was in use. I pressed the rocker to open the door. It moved with a little resistance. Fog gives everything a thin coat you can feel if your gloves are thin enough. Inside, the red handset lay in its cradle. The call button glowed, as if it were a thing with a pulse. CGT, I said, low because you don't shout at small spaces. Handset is down, but the unit shows active. I won't break the connection. Received, the operator said. We hear the same 3 low tones and ventilation. No voice. Our camera at 542 is flaring. The vis sensor says visibility 48 meters and variable. I leaned close without touching and let my cheek feel the shallow warmth inside the box. The way a cupboard that's been opened and closed recently holds air a fraction different to the hall. The box breathed. I listened to it breathe. 112 to unit, came another voice. Galicia's center, calm. A woman who had probably spent half her life saying sentences designed to build bridges. We also have open line from a mobile. AML stable. We can patch it to you. The second line occupied a different corner of my head. Softer, not electronic, just air moving in a small cabin. The faintest door ajar chime that 1,000 cars use. The fragment of a nav voice in Spanish. Recol. cut off as if a hand had gone over a speaker. Two worlds met inside my ear, one that belonged to fiber and boxes, and one that belonged to a car. Could be someone who pulled into the lay-by and then moved on. A younger version of me would have said. He wouldn't have been wrong, but he also wouldn't have stood with his glove on the box and his body listening for the feeling that the fog changes when there's a thing in it that isn't fog. Ask the caller post to press twice if they can hear me, I said. These old pillars have tactile switches that make plain clicks. It's a barbaric language, and sometimes it's the only one available. Post SOS, Aquí Tráfico, the 112 operator said, repeating in good order to the machine that lives between us and a person. If you can hear, press twice. Two tiny clicks came through the patch, not tones, contacts touching. I exhaled through my nose. Not fear. Relief at not being the only animal that could say yes to something in this white world. I swept my torch along the verge. On nights like this, the ground surface is its own map. The short grass had collected a silver dust. In a patch the size of a hand just past the edge of the asphalt, that dust had not settled. Less cold, not warm. A place with a memory a little younger than the space around it. I put my hand there, glove on, and felt cold all the same. Your brain registers the difference even if a thermometer would call you dramatic. Control. I will walk 10 meters forward and 10 back, I said. Keep the red X tight. Received. PMV. Remains at 60. We have notifications to Conservación and to the local Protección Civil in case of need. I counted steps under my breath the way I always do. The white paint at the edge pulled light back like it wanted to be seen, and then regretted it. No glass scatter. No faint smear, where a tire had expressed an opinion. The barrier at this point is a run of steel with a concrete moment at the junction. I put my palm flat against the galvanized and felt the small beads of moisture like sugar under an egg white. At shoulder height, there was a clean rectangle, 2 hands wide. A person's shoulder had been there, or a bag. Ordinary things make ordinary marks. Ordinary marks are why we get to sleep. 112, the woman said, now just a little softer, like she'd leaned closer to her own microphone because she couldn't help it. We have a very faint voice on the mobile. We can't make words. It could be exhalation. We also have a single syllable like esper, wait, or espejo if my brain is making poetry out of static. Ask them to press when I knock, I said. I turned my baton and knocked twice, gently, on the side of the pillar. The pillar made a small, atonal sound, more touch than note. The patch gave 2 clicks in response, a heartbeat later. We stood there together in the fog, my car making a blue pulse against a world that didn't care. The sign over the carriageway telling the same single sentence to people who were already doing the right thing. The fog takes sound and keeps it close. Somewhere out in it, a lorry's engine brake muttered for a second and then vanished like a thought you don't want to keep. CGT, the controller said, her voice doing that careful thing where people put facts down like stepping stones. Note, 3 years ago, same PK, we had a single vehicle off into the lay-by. SOS post, seized the line. Voice on recording said, no puedo, I can't. Found at first light. Post hardware was changed the following week. We have no other anomalies logged since. Voice. Voice on recording said, voice. Voice on recording said, voice. Voice. Voice on recording said, there it was again, that neat little loop our system seemed to make on winter nights. The thing that goes, an event, a line, an open call, a replacement, the time going out by a few minutes on a piece of equipment you don't look at twice in daylight. You can do 2 things with that. You can make yourself a haunted road, or you can give yourself a job and do it again knowing it will be nothing most times and something once when you need it to be. Post SOS. The 112 operator said softly to whatever was on the other side of plastic and copper. La Guardia Civil está aquí. Pulse 2 veces si ve luz azul. If you see blue, press twice. 2 clicks. Then, almost as if the fog had pressed itself up against the mesh and tried to speak, a small human thing. Azul. Not loud, not dramatic, just a person putting a color into the night because they could. When you are given a word like that, you don't ask for more. You give one back. We're here, I said in English. Because it's the voice I use for half the tourists on this road, and because fog belongs to every language, and then again in Spanish, soft into the seam around the door. Estamos aquí. The pillar line carried the three tones once, as if it wanted to be ceremonial, and then the amber call light began to fade. Systems make choices without asking us. The mobile line held for 3 breaths more. In that time, the sat-nav fragment returned, recalculate, and then culando, recalculating, made whole for the first time, and then the cutting click of a call that had been held too long by a device that had decided not to hold it anymore. Both lines ended within a minute of each other. Bravo uno seis, 112, the operator said. Quick to get to the line where we all become, a paper again. Both lines terminated. AML device no longer presenting. CGT shows no obstruction on sensors. We will log and save audio. Timestamps on SOS side show 37. Our console is 244. We're telling their technician. Received, I said, and I stood with my palm on the cold steel of the barrier and told myself this was not a ritual, and then did it anyway. If you need us again, I said to no one, to the white, to the strip of road that has had to hold more stories than it wants, we'll hear. Conservacion rolled past on the opposite side 10 minutes later, their orange beacon a warmer color than mine, heading for a salt check farther east. The driver tapped his horn once in that way. People save for other people who are also awake at this hour for reasons that have nothing to do with choice. I waved without looking away from the verge. Then, because the fog can hide not only trouble but the feeling of being foolish, I opened the SOS door and checked the inside with my torch for dust that would tell me someone had truly touched the handset. The cradle contacts were clean and dry. The call button had left the faintest oval of condensation on the inside of the window when I closed it again. That could have been my doing. It could have been no one's. We brought the road back to itself in stages. PMV remained at 60 for another 20 minutes, and then, when the sensors rose to 65 meters of visibility, the board went blank and the world gave us back distance. I sat in the car and let the heater dry my gloves while I wrote the report line by line, because that is a job you do immediately or never properly. PK 500 and 43, A8 Sentido Oviedo. SOS post line seized, handset down, audio, post ventilation, 3 low tones, hazard like tick. Mobile 112 open line concurrent. Cabin fan, door. A jar chime once. Sat nav fragment, 1 word, azul. 2. Button confirmation from post when prompted. Fog visibility tilde 50 meters. Cameras flared. No vehicle located in lay-by or shoulder. No debris. Barrier shows small heat void at shoulder height. Lines terminated without recontact. CGT time offset on post server noted. Conservacion notified. That's the chalk outline of a night. On the way back toward base, I ran westbound through the same PK. Without meaning to have it, puts your wheels in the grooves. The fog had thinned. The white posts came back one by one like little men standing straighter. I slowed unconsciously, not enough to bother anyone behind, and glanced at the pillar through a slice of clearer air. It sat square and patient, a tool among other tools. My radio said nothing to me for a full minute. That's a luxury at this hour. At 8 the next day, with the morning gone the color of paper that's been left near a window, the CGT technician came by our little office with an expression that read like a weather forecast. Unsettled, but not unkind. He had a printout that showed timestamps and the little blocks of voltage that mean a line has woken and a line has slept. The offset was there. The post's controller thought the call ended at 3:07. The server's clock had turned itself into a different night for a few hours during maintenance. He pointed at a line item in a different column 3 winters earlier, same post, same error on the reader that senses the handset's lift. We fix, we replace, he said honest, and the road makes itself a copy when it wants to. I nodded, because I have learned to be polite to the parts of the world I have no responsibility for. He left with his folder and his unsettled nice face. I made coffee with the machine that tastes like the 70s, and I listened once to the audio the center had emailed. The 3 tones that make everyone imagine a heart where there's only a line. The tick. The little careful azul that might have been only in my head if 4 other people in 2 rooms hadn't heard it too. You can fill your head with the ordinary reasons. You should. Fog kills cameras. Old boxes breathe. Clocks drift. Phones try to help and then stop when electricity, the only thing in this world with a shorter patience than some drivers, decides the moment is done. You can also put your hand flat on a guardrail some night at PK 543 and feel the way the water in the steel says, more things have touched it than you will ever count. And you can let yourself think, just for a second, that somebody in a car built in a year you can still name sat there and said the only word they had that would get your eyes to turn the right way. A week later, I ran that piece at the same hour as if the night had set a quiet appointment with me. Fog had taken the night off. The sky put a little faint brown above the towns and called it weather. The PMV were blank. The pillars sat with their green LEDs like small lighthouses having a restful shift. I did not stop. I touched the wheel at the bottom with 2 fingers when I passed the pillar, the way you do with church doors if that's the way you were raised, which I wasn't. And then I went on. I don't make claims for the road. It doesn't need me to. I write my CAD lines. I stand where the fog tells me to stand. I listen when the air in a fiberglass box convinces me it's worth bending my head closer. And I keep a quiet, private habit now. If I walk past a post SOS anywhere on my patch, I tap the orange door twice with my knuckle. Not enough to startle. Enough that the part of me that sat with a fog wall in a single word feels like it's returned a call. Devices don't care. People do. The road sits between those 2 facts and gets us home most nights anyway.